Ask for Tuppence, Take a Penny. This is one of my favourites, actually, from Series 2, the first episode. This is where Jack Ford becomes, of course, the leader of the Fitters Union, and against him is Les Mallow, and he's his biggest adversary, really, in Series 2. He's after his job. He wanted his job. Of course, you will notice that the actor did change from Series 1 to 2, a very different kind of character in Series 2, because they're different actors. But a great adversary for Jack Ford. And basically, the predecessor, who Jack took over from, Norman Taylor, made this arrangement. Well, he wrote down in front of the committee that he wanted to ask for tuppence, take a penny, although they say that it's tuppence that the workers want on the basic. And, of course, as Jack finds out later, this wasn't true.
I was made a note here, Brother Mallow. Well, maybe you'd like to read it for us.
Well, it looks like ask for tuppence, take a penny.
Is that the way it was? Cards on the table, brothers.
It's great the way Matt Headley is promoted as Jack Ford's assistant in this episode, although it does come under fierce opposition from the other members of the Fitters Union who call the meeting. They're sort of like, oh, you made your brother-in-law the assistant secretary, did you? You know, the Fitters Union. And they've got their backs up about it. But as Jack says later on in this series, when Matt is saying about the workers' rights, he's saying, well, Les wants my job and he wants your job for one of his mates. And that's the truth, really, isn't it? And it's very interesting, isn't it? With the politics of the times, of course, because Les Mallow and a lot of the people back then were, well, you'd call them communists, but socialists, you'd call them, wouldn't you? Not communists. But Jack refers to Les as red as a fire engine, you know. But that was the thing about Jack that was so great. He was on the right, but he did stand up for the people as well, but he got his. So, you know, a very complex character, Jack Ford. He wasn't... Matt Headley was all his heart, wasn't it? His heart and soul, whereas Jack, he had a lot of intelligence up there. And I love what happens later on in the series when he knows he's leaving the Fitters Union and he helps Matt out so that he can take over his job. But in this episode, yes, it is all about getting a better deal for the workers, and Jack does achieve this. And, of course, you've got Horatio Manners in this episode, which is fantastic, doing deals with him. And you can see their relationship. They have a really good relationship, him and Jack. They're on the same page. They enjoy it. They enjoy meeting each other and negotiating, whereas Matt, he finds this really... odd, to be honest. I think he feels very out of place. He's like, he takes it all to heart, doesn't he? Whereas Jack realizes this is all a game, and I think he says to Matt that what's better, to be all Labour pure like Les Mallow, or to get them what they want, which is what he does achieve. So he's very clever, Jack Ford. Very clever.
I've worked out a few figures.
Been doing your homework, have you? Yeah. Do you believe everything you read in the Financial Times?
You're not saying an organ of the capitalist press tells lies?
Certainly not. They could be misled.
By you?
By me, by you, by anyone in our position. Quite inadvertently, of course. We're shocking, Mr. Headley.
You're shocked, Matt?
Well, I started this game a bit late. I'll play better when I learn the rules.
There aren't any, Headley. That's what makes it so difficult. What are you asking?
My committee wants tuppence an hour.
Two things I liked about you, Ford. Your brains and your courage. Whatever happened to your brains?
I do love the ending as well, because they do achieve what they wanted to. They managed to get a rise on the basic, and Jack's there, and they're all there, aren't they? And it's great, the ending. I mean, Dolly's there as well, and she's like, what's Jessie Seaton doing here? And he's like, I'm going to dance with her, but she's not going to like it. And then what he says at the end, it's typical Jack Ford, really. And you see this later on in the series, his ruthlessness. But to be honest, she kind of deserved it, because she was consorting with Les Mallow, and they were sort of conspiring together. she kind of shopped him. So it's justified, really. And what he says is, you don't belong here anymore. You know, which is like the ultimate disrespect to Jessie Ashdown now, not Jessie Seaton, because she was always more into politics than Jack Ford. So that showed his, you know, his cruel side, but she kind of deserved it.
I think perhaps I made a mistake. I've come to take her home.
Aye, Mr. Ashton, you take her home. She doesn't belong here. Not anymore.
Dance to the daddy, sing to the mommy, dance to the daddy, to the mommy sing. Thou shalt have the fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have the fishy when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have the fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a haddock when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have the fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have the bloater when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have the fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have the mackerel when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have the fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have the salmon when the boat comes in.
On to episode 2 of series 2 of When the Boat Comes In, Tram Ride to the Blue Bell. This is where Tom gets a visit from a Scotsman, and also Jack, a Scotsman, is looking for him. And yeah, he wants money because they sort of double-crossed him in prison because they were tobacco barons, and he's saying he's from a Scottish razor gang, but it turns out he's not.
My mother never hurt you.
Now, she gave birth to you, didn't she? Your Wayne and your mammy. Well, you have got something precious to lose. 2 lives.
Another theme of this episode is Jack Ford getting compensation for Harry Duffy. I think to begin with, he thinks that he'll be alright, we'll find something for him to do because he's right-handed, but it turns out he's left-handed, and that's the hand that he's injured, and he says he needs all the compensation he can get, otherwise he's not going to get married. And yeah, I mean, harsh times, harsh realities. But Jack really does help the workers, doesn't he? I mean, as I've said in previous podcasts, there is an end game for him. It's not just about helping people, but at the same time, he really helped some people, didn't he?
Well,
The doctor thinks it might be septic. She gone to hospital for tests on Monday. If it is septic, then the hand will have to come off. Maybe it's half an arm and all.
dear God. Still, it mightn't come to that. I mean, if he's not sure.
He was sure, all right. He was just covering his bets. I was going to get married next week.
You'll get married, lad. You'll just have to postpone it for a while, that's all.
What use would I be doing now? How could I provide for a one-armed man?
We'll find you something, Harry. You've still got your right hand.
Clarkin, maybe?
Didn't nobody ever tell you, Mr. Ford? I was left-handed.
No, son. Nobody ever told me. I'll fight for every penny I can.
I'll need it, won't I?
And you'll get it. You can rely on me.
Oh, I do, Mr. Ford. I do.
I talked about Lavender Avenue. Of course, Jack wants to keep Matt where he can keep an eye on him, because Dolly, of course, isn't necessarily in favour of this, is he? Even though they're brother and sister. She's like, oh, we'd have more time for this if Matt wasn't here. And Jack's like, oh, we'll always have time for this. But yeah, that's interesting, yeah. And you can see why later on in the series, because when he gets drunk, he says too much, doesn't he? And sometimes he listens to what other people say. That's what Jack says. And it's true. If you get further on in the series, there's many examples of this. And of course, Dolly wants to adopt a baby. And at the end of the episode, you find out that it's not possible because Jack's been in prison. And this is another big blow for Dolly, because it's quite clear that she wanted a child and it meant a lot to her. And yeah, this was another nail in their coffin, to be honest.
Naturally, we require character references and evidence of financial stability, but the only real impediments, other than those of religious difference, are bankruptcy, lunacy, and
Bankruptcy, lunacy, and imprisonment, none of which I feel sure can apply to you.
We'll never get a bail now.
We'll find another way.
Oh, be honest, Jack, there isn't another way. You went to prison, man. I know it was to help a widow on her bed, but you still went inside.
28 days. A debt to society, they said, and I thought I'd paid it. And once you start paying out, folks always come back for more. Till you make them stop.
There's a funny scene between Matt and Jack in the pub where Matt says about if we're going to belt somebody, we better do it where nobody can see us, and Jack laughs. I mean, I love that scene. They had a great relationship, didn't they, Matt and Jack? You could see they were great pals. And it's also funny at the end of this, because at the end of the episode, they get the Scotsman and they get the money back because the Scotsman has thrown a brick through Jack's window, and he's also made Tom go back to the Seatons, the shop, and steal money from them and give it to the Scotsman, because he actually said that he was going to hurt Bella and Tommy, his son. So it had a very good ending, and yeah, I like the bit where Jack puts the money in his mouth that's left. Yeah.
I spoke to Glasgow today. You know, I couldn't understand why you stayed down here instead of going back there. But now I know. You and a few of your mates did a job up there. A big one. And you took off with all the money. And they've been looking for you ever since. With these. Well, now they'll know where to find you. I made sure of that.
Well, kill me.
You're lucky we didn't.
Oh, bugger off, man, while you can still walk.
Wait a minute. How much did he have out of the till?
£3.
Well, that's 4.
Ta.
And that'll pay for my window. Now, bugger off.
I would also say episode 2 of When the Boat Comes In, the second series, has probably the funniest ending, which we're going to see next. Because Matt really wasn't in favour of doing this, because he basically says that we didn't need to, but you wanted to. And Jack made him believe that there was no other way, but Jack was just like, well, it's just a fight, you know. And it's a brilliant ending to this one.
You knew this Glasgow gang was after that fellow? Aye. Since I spoke to the Glasgow District Secretary this morning. He knows a lot of funny fellas up there. And some of them have been looking for McNeil for weeks. Well, now they know where to find him. So we didn't have to fight at all, did we? A threat would have been enough. Him and his mates deserve more than threats. They got it. But you had no right to risk it, Jack. You could have got hurt. Any of us could. I'm talking about you. If things had gone wrong, you could have been slashed or lost your job. Chance I had to take. That's what I thought, Noel, but I was wrong. Hell, man, you wanted this fight. When I thought there wasn't another way. But there was, and you knew there was. You had no right to do it, Jack. No right. Our Dolly relies on you. Harry Duffy, and a hell of a lot like them. I have to wrap myself up in cotton wool now, have I? Yes, Jack, you have. As long as Fort needs you. Matt, it was just a fight.
You're coming home.
No, I'm not.
And your Dolly thinks we haven't got a bairn.
Dance to the daddy, sing to the mommy, dance to the daddy, to the mommy sing. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy, thou shalt have a haddock when the boat comes in, thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy, thou shalt have a bloater when the boat comes in, thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy, thou shalt have a mackerel when the boat comes in, thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy, thou shalt have a salmon when the boat comes in. When the boat comes in.
Speaking about episode 3 of When the Boat Comes In from series 2, A Pillow Full of Buttercups, basically Jack gets a visit from Ted Chater, who he knew in the army. He had a thing for young girls, very young. In this case, it's a girl of 15 that he's got pregnant, and Jack calls him a bloody madman, which is 100% correct. And yeah, it's a very grim episode. Ted basically blackmails Jack, saying that he was on the fiddle in Russia and he's got to help him, otherwise he's going to shop him. I think he would have done as well, potentially.
And she loved me, Jack. I mean, she really did. Trusted me, like.
You went to bed?
Bed. My greatcoat spread out in a water meadow. Buttercups for a pillow. There was a bird singing. She said I imagined it, but it was real.
So, yeah, Jack does help him because, luckily, the father of the daughter that got pregnant is one of Jack's members. He's in arrears. He visits him later, and you find out the shocking conclusion to this is that his daughter committed suicide. And it's even worse than that. She committed suicide, but she didn't know how to do it right, so it was obviously very painful as well, and just terrible, isn't it?
She took my razor, Mr. Ford. Cut her throat. Only she didn't know the way to do it right. God help Mr. Ford. She didn't.
And also with Ted Chater, he commits suicide. So it's kind of a very odd Romeo and Juliet, isn't it, really? I mean, in a weird way. But yeah, with Ted, basically Jack's shooting out with manners, isn't he? And I think there's a couple of members of the army that are there, officers, you know, gentlemen. And he wants to kill one of them, doesn't he, Ted? But instead, he kills himself in the end because Jack has a word with him. And it's just a really grim end to this one. Back at the Seatons, Bill wants Billy to specialise as a doctor. Billy doesn't want to. He wants to be a general practitioner, I believe. And his father works out how much he owes the family, and it's like £1,080 or something like that, which was a hell of a lot of money back then. Over 9 years he worked it out. Yeah, he's very much a shopkeeper now, isn't he now, Bill? And it's funny because when he first talked about opening a shop, he was like, oh, these people, they're just counting their money all the time, and oh, it's going to be a terrible life. But he ends up like that, doesn't he, really? And he embraces it. He really does. Or as he says, he's a cripple that keeps a shop, which is a bit harsh on him for saying that. But his dream was always to walk again, wasn't it? And they were hoping that he would specialise, Billy, and then he could pay them back that way. That's exactly what Tom says to Billy. That's how they were hoping he would pay them back. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, Bill's got a broken back. He's in a wheelchair. Throughout the whole series, he wants to walk again, as I can imagine you would be like that, wouldn't you? I mean, it must be such a devastating blow. Just little things, as he said in the previous episode, just walking, you know, just round the corner, just getting a tram, whatever, back then.
Look, I really am sorry, kiddo. It's my life, you know.
Is it? Not Mum's, not Da's, not mine, just yours, eh?
Look, why are you so keen on us being a specialist anyway?
Because that way we thought you might pay Da back.
I want to pay him back. Billy, we thought you might cure him.
And yeah, there is a future episode where Billy suggests surgery and says it to Bella, but he says it could make him worse. So then Bella puts her foot down and she says, I can't have that. Yeah, which I can understand from her point of view as well. But it's very sad, isn't it, how it all happened to Bill, in the pit incident. Yeah, and if it wasn't for Jack, they wouldn't have got anything. And I do love this series. It's so brilliant, isn't it? There's so much that goes on, particularly the time era. But with this one, a very sad ending. Where would I place it in series 2? Oh, somewhere in the middle, I'd say. Yeah, it's not my favourite, it's not my least favourite, but it's a very good episode. But as I said, it's very, very grim, isn't it? Very real, very gritty. But that is When the Boat Comes In, to be honest. There's not many far-fetched storylines, particularly in the first 3 series. Perhaps in the last series, you could say there's a few far-fetched things, especially with Matt Headley. A lot of people don't like that with series 4 Matt got killed off, and basically he'd ruined the funds at the Fitters Union, and he'd also had an affair with a woman that was working there. A lot of people didn't find that believable, I think. The thing I'll say about that is I think they did it because they had to, perhaps. Maybe if Jack just went back in the 4th series and Matt was there, it would have been too easy for him. That's the only thing I can think of why they did that. But we'll talk about that in future podcasts. But as for A Pillow Full of Buttercups, it is a good episode, a very gritty episode, but a very, very grim ending, yeah.
Dance to the daddy, sing to the mommy, dance to the daddy, to the mommy sing. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a haddock when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a bloater when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a mackerel when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a salmon when the boat comes in. When the boat comes in.
Speaking about episode 4 of series 2 of When the Boat Comes In, Rubles for the Promised Land. This is an interesting episode because you have a Russian guy by the name of, is it Yakanovich or Yakonovich, as Tom Seaton says, who's looking for Jack Ford for what he got up to in Russia, in Murmansk. And it's interesting because you actually feel a bit of sympathy for the Russian that's after Jack. And to begin with, of course, he's looking for him, and he gets in the Jewish community, doesn't he, in Galashield, and he tries to find him that way. He does eventually track him down, but Tom bumps into him, and he kind of likes him, doesn't he?
There's a fella looking for you. Foreign fella. Name's Kaganovich.
His name's what?
Why, it's Kaganovich, someone like that. Jewish fella from Russia. Says he knows you.
5 years since I was in Russia, Tom. I met a lot of people. Didn't keep an address book either.
Says you can help him.
Aye, half the town thinks that. His hand's never out of his pocket.
Tom has moved out of the Seaton's house to prove that he can do it by himself, but he's gone to probably one of the worst places that you could go, like a hostel kind of place, but rougher than that it looks like, doesn't it? I mean, there's thieves there, and of course this Yakanovich, Yokonovich, however you pronounce it, he gets set upon by these 3 thieves, and he's very clever what he does. He says that he has a knife, and he says that he can't take them all on, but he'll take one of them with him. He used his brain a lot, didn't he, that guy? And Tom sticks up for him. Of course, he doesn't fully know, doesn't fully understand how Jack, how he's involved with Jack from Murmansk, but that comes out later.
Russia.
In Russia, you can learn everything there is to know about death.
You're saying you can take the three of us?
I'm not so foolish. You'll defeat me, of course. But one of you will die. Maybe even two.
They'd hang you for that.
But you would still be dead. Put my book back in the case, please.
Another interesting part of this episode is Billy trying to become a doctor, and of course things were very different back then. Back then it was very unusual to get care for free. You had to pay back then, and he sees a doctor who's getting paid for it. And what I mean is, there was no NHS back then, was there? Doctors were private. If you didn't have money, you wouldn't get care, basically. And he sees this guy, and he says, this doctor, and he says that he enjoys his luxuries, which is fair enough. He does, doesn't he? He likes having a parlour maid at the time. He likes having, what was it? I'm trying to remember now. He likes going away to the south of France and all this, and hope you enjoy the plum cake, and yeah. But it's because of Billy's politics, because he's a socialist back then, he couldn't get the job. And it's very interesting, like, how it develops later, because obviously he owes his family, the Seatons, a lot of money. As Bill later says, he goes through it, how much money he owes the family in total. It's a lot for back then. And he says to him, you'll have to change your politics then to get a better job, to get a paying job, which is what he deserves, isn't it? But because he puts his politics above everything else, he can't get this job at this job interview. And this doctor who's getting paid handsomely says about Dr. Stoker, who runs this clinic, this free clinic, and he says, it's poverty-stricken there. So that's where Billy does end up going, as Jack Ford calls it, his socialist utopia. That's what he calls it. But later on, Billy does have the best of both worlds, really, because he gets a job at the Fitters Union being the doctor, and he also works at Dr. Stoker's, so he's able to pay the family back, and he can, stick up for his beliefs as well. So in the end, he does get the best of both worlds. But yeah, I mean, maybe he shouldn't have been so honest if he wanted that job, that paying job, but that's the way Billy was.
Stoker. Oh, forgive me. Dr. Stoker, he practices in Wellesley Street. And what he practices is poverty, although he took no vows. I admire you and I wish you well, but my comfort's important to me.
It's good of you to see me.
Not at all, not at all. I hope you enjoyed the plum cake.
Thanks very much. Almost as good as me mother makes.
Right, I'll show you the way it's...
And I love the ending of this one. This is probably one of my favourite endings. It's brilliant, isn't it? Because obviously Yukanovic goes to see Jack, and he wants the money from Jack, and he doesn't realise that it's this currency that's no longer in Russia. It's worthless, as Jack says. And yeah, it's very funny, and he thinks that Jack has double-crossed his father, and Jack says his father double-crossed him, and we don't completely find out, but at the end he has this pocket watch with the name of his father on it. So yeah, I think it's a very clever ending. Of course, this pocket watch comes up later in the series, doesn't it? I think Dolly says about Matt not liking that pocket watch. He hates it, but I think it's a nice watch. And as Jack says, I can't remember now, he says something about how, like it's so many carats or whatever. And yeah, but it's a very good ending, because also Tom and Matt go rushing off down to the beach, don't they, to help him. And Jack's like, here comes the cavalry, late as usual. Yeah, but he didn't need them in the end. And Yukanovic makes his way, I don't know where he ended up in the end. He wanted to go to Palestine, wasn't it? Because he's a Jew, and he was hoping with this money he could get there. But obviously, as Jack says, you're not going to get far with that money. So yeah, I think it's a very good episode, and it's a different episode as well, I'd say, but a very enjoyable one.
Aren't you going to count it?
This is Kerensky money.
That's right. Like I said, I doubt if you get to Palestine on that. I doubt if you'd get to Gateshead.
Kerensky money?
Kerensky formed the government in 1917. They issued money for a while. It is worthless.
That's right. I was taken for a mug, Mr. Kaganovich.
Were you? Or are you taking me for one?
Oh no, it's your dad's money, all right. He signed it. He was real crafty. Look.
This money was stolen from me by Sergeant Ford, an Englishman, Vladimir Leon Kaganovich.
Took me in real proper, your dad did. You recognize the writing?
It is my father's. Once I would have killed you.
Let's go and have a drink. Just a quick one though, Tom, and you better get off home to your mum.
Think I need looking after, do you?
No, bonny lad. I think she does.
Dance to the daddy, sing to the mommy. Dance to the daddy, to the mommy, sing. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a haddock when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a bloater when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a mackerel when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a salmon when the boat comes in.
Some Bulbs to Make the Garden Bright is actually one of my favourite episodes in Series 2 of When the Boat Comes In. This is basically where Les Mallow blackmails Jack Ford. And it's interesting at the beginning, he really thinks he has him, and it's really terrible the way he got the information out of Matt Headley, because he'd been out with Matt and Tom. Matt had too much to drink, and he divulged what happened in Murmansk in Russia. So then, of course, Les has got this information, and he tries to blackmail Jack, and of course, it doesn't work, does it? But to begin with, it does seem like, what's Jack going to do in this situation?
I wasn't too good last night, was I? I wouldn't say that, Matt. I wouldn't say that at all.
Of course, Tom Seaton returns home to the Seaton family, and he tells them that he's going to be a job and gardener, and Bill, of course, isn't happy about this because he wanted him to follow his way into the family business. But of course, Tom says that he hasn't got the brains for this shopkeeping lark. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I think Tom just wants to be his own man, doesn't he? He wants to do what he wants to do, and he wants to prove that he can do it.
Very much.
All I need, Tommy and Mick. That's what I can do, da, make things grow.
You'll be stopping here?
Aye, as long as I'm wanted.
Oh, you want it, all right. Great to hump.
And it's quite funny how you have the Seaton family kind of in different camps politically now. Of course, you have Billy and Jesse, they're together, along with Les Mallow, you think, at this point. And then, of course, you have Bill, who has turned into a sort of capitalist now, hasn't he? Because he's a shopkeeper. He's all about making money. He wants to get on. And of course, you've got Tom now as well, sticking up for his marrow, Jack Ford. So yeah, it's very interesting with all that. And it seems like Tom and Billy might have a fight. The mum, Bella, tries to interfere. But as Bill says, they're grown men. They'll do it their way, not your way. Yeah, I mean, I did really like that, actually, how you could see that. And you do see that in families, how politically people's opinions are different. And I think it really added to the story that they went different ways. And of course, after Bill had his pit accident and he became a shopkeeper, he was going to change, wasn't he? He was going to change his political views because they would be different from when he was a pitman.
Bloody red.
Socialist, Dad, same as you.
Aye. Well, I've been thinking about that.
Have you now?
What did Mr. Mallow want?
Came to tell us some things about Jack Ford.
What about Jack?
Murmansk.
Huh?
Russia, ma'am. Seems like a wonderful Jack hasn't always been such a hero.
Well, look what he is. And it's none of our business, now you remember that.
I'm not so sure.
Well, you better be.
You shut the shop, have you?
Aye, I took 4 and 7pence. No tick. Les Mallow's up to his ears in muck. There's no call for you to go and join him.
I wouldn't say that.
You went in the Blue Bell last night. I was.
You don't seem to have done much to stop it, then.
Well, there wasn't much I could do. Anyway, Jack can handle it. And if he can't, he knows where I live. But mind, you keep out of it.
Suppose I don't.
Then I'll hammer you, Billy boy. I'll hammer you flat.
So Matt comes home drunk, and you're probably expecting the worst at this point, but really, I think he needed to get drunk. After he realises what he has done, he hits the bottle, doesn't he? Because he realises what a terrible thing he's done. He does eventually confront Les Mallow at the pub, and Les basically says he's going to use what he told him, regardless of how he got the information. And Matt says he's harder than Jack. And at this point, actually, Billy does actually kind of stick up for Matt Headley, which is admirable. Yeah, I mean, I think he should. He's a nice bloke, isn't he? And it is a terrible way to get information off of somebody after they've had too many drinks. And as Jack says, Les was drinking lemonade, yeah. So, yeah, I thought that was really bad from Les. And I think this is the last time we see his character in the series, actually, I believe.
If I was Jack, I'd belt you, could you know? Wouldn't make any difference, Matt. Ah, you'd still use what I told you.
Hey, come on, can I get you a drink, Mr. Headley?
No, thanks. Gotta be off.
Jack has a fight at the pub. Of course, somebody knocks over his whiskey. He does later on say, I keep telling myself it's because somebody knocked over my whiskey, but he needed to have a fight, and he is the way he is. But a funny part later is where you find out that Mrs. Charlton works for the Ashtons, and then Jack's sort of denying that he was involved, and he's like, oh, I think he should be prosecuted, the man who did that to your husband. And then the woman's like, I'd like to thank him, I'd like to shake his hand, you know. So that's really funny.
Prosecuted? I'd like to take him by the hand and say thank you very much. Charlton still hasn't got the strength to lay a finger on us.
Still at it, are you, Jack?
Me? Respectable union officials don't get into fights.
No, they don't. But you do.
Still, pretty good came out of it.
But you didn't know, did you? And you didn't care. If I was a man, I'd hit you myself.
You'd end up with a black eye, Bunny lass.
Jack visits Jessie, and I do love their exchanges, like when they're trying to help each other out, basically. Jessie gives Jack a huge clue to what Les Mallow's sister's occupation is. As it turns out, it's one of the oldest occupations ever. Yeah. And that's hilarious, isn't it? Because at this point, you're thinking, how can he get out of this situation? At this point, there's nothing on the table to get him out of it, but Jessie gives him a lifeline. And at the same time, she asks him, is that job for Billy going at the Fitters Union to be a doctor? So, you know, it's very clever, isn't it? They're both very clever, and they're even working together at this point, even though, of course, they're no longer together in a romantic way. And they have a very interesting relationship, I would say, even at this point. It's obviously not romantic now, but they still help each other out. But then again, would have Jessie said that to Jack if she didn't want this job for Billy? We don't know, do we? Probably not, I would suspect, but yeah, you don't know.
I just wondered, you need a doctor's opinion for your compensation cases, don't you? I thought maybe you could use Billy.
That's going to be up to him, Bunny lass.
And it's interesting with Matt's place in the family, because, to be honest, he seems a bit like a son to Dolly and Jack, doesn't he? Because Dolly actually says he's all we've got. You know, so you kind of think of him as a son. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, but it does seem a bit like that, to be honest. And, I mean, he's a great character, though, isn't he? I mean, he's so likeable, and yes, he does things wrong, he makes mistakes, but as Jack says, he's still the same guy he was when he went to war all those years ago, whereas Jack has changed. He says to Dolly, you should have known me before, but whereas Matt, he's completely the same as he was.
You all right?
I've just belted a fella. Time was, that would have done me more good than whiskey. Not anymore. Go to bed, Dolly.
It's only 10 o'clock.
We'll have an early night.
Jack, you won't...
Belton, you go to bed. I've had me fight for the day.
That's all we've got, you know, Jack.
I do know. Head away to bed.
Jack visits Jessie, and I do love their exchanges, like when they're trying to help each other out, basically. Jessie gives Jack a huge clue to what Les Mallow's sister's occupation is. As it turns out, it's one of the oldest occupations ever. Yeah. And that's hilarious, isn't it? Because at this point, you're thinking, how can he get out of this situation? At this point, there's nothing on the table to get him out of it, but Jessie gives him a lifeline. And at the same time, she asks him, is that job for Billy going at the Fitters Union to be a doctor? So, you know, it's very clever, isn't it? They're both very clever, and they're even working together at this point, even though, of course, they're no longer together in a romantic way. And they have a very interesting relationship, I would say, even at this point. It's obviously not romantic now, but they still help each other out. But then again, would have Jessie said that to Jack if she didn't want this job for Billy? We don't know, do we? Probably not, I would suspect, but yeah, you don't know. I don't think she was keen on the whole blackmailing from Les Mallow, to be honest. I don't even think Billy was. But I think it's because of Matt Headley. He was the one involved. I mean, out of all of them, he was just an honest chap, wasn't he? And he just had too much to drink, he said too much, and it was kind of, well, I think it was out of order, really, the way he got the information and used it against him.
A word I said, and that's all. And don't let me catch you out again tonight.
I won't, Mr. Armstrong.
See ya.
I won't let you catch us. Come to preach, have you?
Me? Never in the world, Miss...
Caravez, Fleur Caravez.
That's funny. I thought your name was Daisy Mallow.
What are you after?
Oh, just a chat for you. Maybe a drop of this, eh? Holy. It's a funny thing, that. Last night in London, I met a lass called Fleur. Only one time her name was Daisy, and that's a flower and all. Isn't that funny?
Rotten.
Don't start anything. I'll enjoy it, Les. You won't. Sit down. This, Fleur is a working girl, Les. Night shifts, mostly. 20 quid a week. Sometimes more. Mind you, she sends a bit home to her brother.
That's for my mother, damn you. How can I get my mother when I'm out of work?
Does your mother know what your Daisy's up to?
No, of course not. She thinks she's in the service.
Well, like those two fellas in that story, Les, maybe you've heard it. There's this preacher, like that could be you, Les, and then there's this randy soldier, like that could be me. And the soldier sees the preacher talking to these tarts, and he says, what are you doing, Reverend? And the preacher says, I save fallen women. And the soldier says, well, save one for me, will you? Do you get it, Les?
Yes, I get it.
You're living on immoral earnings, Les, and so's your mum.
But with Les Mallow, where would you rank him as like one of the nemesis of Jack Ford? Like, where is he? Is he number one? Is he two? Is he three? I mean, there's quite a few, isn't there? Even Manners later on becomes a bit of a nemesis for him. And also you have the guy, Colfax. Yes, I mean, I think Colfax is probably the biggest adversary for Jack Ford later on. But at this stage, I'd definitely say with Les Mallow, he was the biggest enemy for Jack, and he's dealt with completely, because I don't believe we see him again in another episode, which is kind of a shame. Although I didn't like him, obviously, because you're meant to like Jack, aren't you? You're meant to like Jack and all the other characters. But yeah, good character. But yeah, I think he was a lot more evil, wasn't he, the second time around? The first time around, he seemed all right. I mean, quite political, obviously. But he seemed more, I mean, not real, but I mean, there was no edge to him. There was no nastiness, the original Les Mallow. Whereas the second Les Mallow, I mean, polar opposites, really, I thought. But it's interesting, it does happen in shows, doesn't it? They have to recast characters, and what do you do? It's a hard situation. Later on it happens with Lady Caroline, who we haven't met yet in the series, and that was very odd for a lot of people, because the Lady Caroline, the first Lady Caroline, was amazing, and the second one, I don't know, I'm saying she was terrible, but again, they seemed very different personalities. But it must be very difficult when you have to recast great characters. Well, thanks a lot for listening to When the Boat Comes In podcast. There'll be more of these, of course. I'm going to keep doing it until the end of the series. End of series 4. Yeah, there were 4 series. So we've still got quite a few to go, though, of series 2. As always, you can check out the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music. And, of course, it's on YouTube as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Bonnie lad, bonnie lass.
When the boat comes in.
Speaking about the next episode of When the Boat Comes In, God and Love and Wellesley Street, you may have noticed my hat is different from the hat I normally wear. I've actually misplaced it, but this is my substitute hat, because this is a very similar hat to when Jack Ford visits the Duke of Bedlington along with Lady Caroline. Yeah, it's very similar, isn't it? So yes, the next episode, God and Love and Wellesley Street. This is where Billy puts his socialist ideals into practice, and to be honest, he does a very good thing, doesn't he? Helping all these people out for nout. But at the same time, he hasn't got any self-respect because he doesn't get paid, as Tom Seaton says. And also, he owes debts to the family. That's the big thing. It's all very well being noble, doing the right thing, helping people for nothing, but I do actually believe what Bella says is 100% true. Charity starts at home. He's got to pay back his debts, hasn't he? Eventually, thanks to his sister, of course, Jessie, she sorts it out for him so he can work at the Fitters Union as a doctor, and also for Dr. Stoker.
We're talking money now, boy. Love will have to wait. It usually does.
200 a year, you say?
Payable quarterly.
How much work for that?
It depends on the accidents. Could be night for a month and you'll be at it round the clock. Just don't know.
Round the clock?
You're not afraid of a bit of work, are you?
Well, it's not that. It's just, I've got a job.
Who with? No, Jessie never said.
I've just started with Dr. Stoker.
Stoker? Why, the Good Samaritan.
Is that what they call him?
Either that or bloody fool. You'll not get fucking when he pays you.
He needs me, Jack. He needs all the help he can get.
How much are you getting?
You're a cod for me dinner. Look, can I think it over?
Is that the polite way to say no?
Well, it's just, I'm needed, you see.
No, I don't see. Thank God. You sure you won't change your mind?
No, thanks.
And have a sandwich.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting with Dr. Stoker. I like the scene where he says to Billy, "What are you, a saint or an idiot?" And Billy's like, "I want to be a saint." And Dr. Stoker's like, "It takes a bit of working at to become a saint. To begin with, people will call you an idiot," which is true, working for nothing.
You don't want me then?
Of course I want you. But you've just qualified. You can do a bit better than this. Go on.
I'm staying.
You want to be an idiot then?
Why not a saint?
Oh, takes time to be a saint. Got to work at it.
Of course, you feel sorry for the Seatons, don't you, that Billy has decided to go down this path of not being paid for what he does. I mean, it's noble in one respect, but in another respect, it's terrible, isn't it, not getting paid? All those years of Bill and Tom and Bella all suffering to put him through university, and now he's not getting paid because of his politics, really. But as I say, later on he does get the best of both worlds. He gets paid at the Fitters Union by Jack Ford, thanks to Jessie. And yeah, in the end it's all right. But to begin with, in this episode, you can see their frustration. It would be awful, wouldn't it, if this happened? And I think it's even worse when he actually sends the note to them saying, "At this rate, it will take so long for me to pay you back," and he only sends a £1 note. You know, it's just, it's kind of rubbing salt in the wounds, really. Although Billy does say, "I'm putting into practice the socialist beliefs of my father," so yeah, I can see it from that point of view as well. But yeah, as Jessie says, if he didn't get a paying job as well, those people would bring him down. he'd be able to bring them up if he's being paid as well, which he does later on.
Well, it was a struggle putting him through college. My husband was a pitman, you see, till he had his accident, and money was hard to come by, but we managed somehow.
It does you great credit, Mrs. Seaton.
Oh, I don't want credit. Not for myself. I just want our Billy to get on.
I think he has begun very well.
Do you? I don't. He'll end up with nothing.
Jesus had nothing. Sell all thou hast and give it to the poor. Dr. Stoker has done that, and so have I. Why not your son?
He's given to the poor what isn't his to give.
Your need for him, you mean?
I mean his debts. To his father, to his brother.
Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors is a fairly accurate translation. Can you not forgive your sons?
Look, all I want for him is to have a job that pays. He can have this one as well.
So he told me. Unfortunately, God needs him here full time.
Our Billy doesn't believe in God.
God still needs him.
Ah, you're a hard one, aren't you? To take a son from his mother.
Jesus also said, "Who is my mother?"
Aye. And he said, "Woman, behold thy son and all." He was hanging on the cross when he said that. Do you have any children, Vicar?
A daughter.
And do you love her?
Yes.
Then what would you do if she said to you, "Who is my father"?
If she said it in the way that our Lord meant it, I should say thank God.
Aye, I believe you would and all. So you'll do nothing to help our Billy?
Believe me, Mrs. Seaton, I am helping him.
Hard all through?
Quite a career.
I've talked me head off. Like I was drunk or something.
I'm good at making people talk.
Aye. Too good.
I promise I won't tell. Honour bright. Miner, soldier, burglar, sheep stealer. Quite a career.
You forgot jailbird.
And now, like Candide, you cultivate your garden.
I cultivate other people's. That reminds me, I've got a job on for you.
Please, don't let us go yet. I like talking to you. I like it very much.
I do think she would have ate him alive, you know, that expression. He was completely smitten over her, wasn't he? So much so that I think, yeah, only could have ended badly. But I love him sticking up for his Mara, for his mate, for his friend, Tom Seaton. And it shows you what Jack was like as a man. He was, with people he loved, he would treat the other people who were against them really harsh, but that was what was needed. And it was clear she was kind of manipulative, wasn't she? And she was a collector of people. And it's quite funny because her father, who works for Dr. Stoker, well, I say works, he doesn't get paid, does he? Maybe he gets paid in haddock. He collects the sick. That's what Jack says, but Miss Courtney likes them young and strong. And yeah, she's a very evil character, actually, if you think of the series. And it's quite rare that it's a woman. But with her, yeah, she's very manipulative and just a nasty piece of work, really, I thought.
I'd like some whiskey, please.
Make that two. Yes, sir.
About Joe Hodgson.
He sends you his apologies. And this.
And what on earth is that?
A pawn ticket, Miss Courtney, from a pawn shop in the Mile End Road.
Silver cigarette box. It was a gift from my father. He won it at Gymkhana in India years ago. It's very dear to me.
You're fond of your father?
It's hardly your business. I love him very much.
You're fond of Tom Seaton and all?
I beg your pardon.
You're driving him daft, but then you know that.
My dear man.
A lady, he said. Like something out of a dream. Are you going to put that in your notebook and all? That's all right.
Thank you, sir.
You could always have me thrown out, you know.
I may have to. But not yet. You interest me. Please, go on.
Joe Hodgson was right. Pretty and charming and scared and out. You're a collector, Miss Courtney.
You're being enigmatic. Such fun.
A collector of chaps who've gotten out.
I think you're confusing me with my father.
No, your father collects the sick, the lame. You like them healthy, Miss Courtney. Big and strong and, what would your word be now? Vulnerable. With a few stories to put in that notebook of yours. And maybe next year they'll bob up in a novel you've written.
You're very perceptive. But what on earth do you want?
Put Tom in your novel by all means. You'll never read it anyway. But lay off him, Miss Courtney. You don't belong here. Go home.
I have an appointment with Mr. Seaton tomorrow.
Break it.
Why should I?
Because if you don't, I'll tell your father what Joe Hodgson told me.
About what, Mr. Ford?
About you, Miss Courtney.
He wouldn't believe you.
Oh, I think he would. I'm a very persuasive sort of fella.
You are indeed. Tom really does have an appointment with me tomorrow.
I know. To tell you where Joe Hodgson is, he asked me to find out.
What will you tell him? Tom might be rather persistent.
Oh, I said Joe's gone deep sea. Now, that means a long voyage, Miss Courtney. If I tell him that, there'll be no trouble.
Why are you doing this?
Because I'm Tom's marrow, Miss Courtney. That means his friend. And I'm not going to stand by and watch while you chew him up and spit out the pips.
Such devotion. It's quite touching. All right. I shall leave your precious Mara unsullied.
Have you paid him?
He hardly regards himself as a gigolo.
I thought he was doing the job for you.
No. Dad, I'll see that he's paid.
Well, that's it then. Good night, Miss Courtney.
I say. Wouldn't you like to be in my notebook?
Not tonight, Miss Courtney. Get yourself one with more pages and we'll see.
When the boat comes in.
This next episode of When the Boat Comes In is one of my favourites of the series. This is where Jack finally has to fulfil the promise to Sir Horatio Manners. And it is a big one, isn't it? Because he has to shut down this firm that are doing really well, Buell Hodge. And basically it's so that Manners can get a trading estate contract.
Cigar all right?
Perfect. So is the cognac. Now let's have the bill.
I beg your pardon?
I must have got through £1 worth of food and drink, maybe even 30 bob. You don't give that kind of money away for nothing. So what do you want, Sir Horatio?
You know I like doing business with you. Nowadays I spend most of my life dealing with gentlemen, sensitive chaps. I have to be so damn careful not to hurt their feelings, forget what I'm after half the time.
Oh, aye.
Last year we agreed you owed me a favour.
That's right.
I want you to pay it back. Well?
Let's hear what you want.
There's a firm called Buell Hodge Limited.
Mid-Tyne Trading Estate, make car components. Nice little firm.
Nice.
They pay 10% over the minimum, that's nice.
I don't.
You're not nice.
Any more than you are. Want you to slow them down.
You want me to what?
You heard. A week will do it.
Why?
My business, Ford.
All right, then how?
Any way you like.
Blank check, like.
Blank check.
How much do you want them slowed?
Just enough so they can't fill their contracts.
I see.
I've no doubt you do.
If I slow them, we're all square. You're off me back.
You won't owe me a damn thing.
I better slow them then.
And it's terrible, isn't it? But at the same time, what Jack does is very clever, isn't it? Or rather, he doesn't say he does it. He says that Matt Headley did it. This was all about sending a wireless message to clubmans. These are the people who make the milling machines. And there's a fault with them. So originally, in the series, in this episode rather, he does get them, you know, he gets them closed down for a week. That was all it would take, as Sir Horatio said. And yeah, it's kind of off from Jack Ford to do this, isn't it? But they were in breach of 3 different agreements, I believe. One was about a first aid kit. You couldn't even open it. They didn't have a tea room. They are little things, yeah. And I suppose he would have let it slide if he didn't have this deal with Horatio, although later he does say to him that he would have shut them down anyway.
Mind if I look around?
Help yourself.
Lavatories?
Right at the front.
Where do they heat that tea?
Over there.
First aid equipment?
My office.
Let's have a look then.
Yeah. I've got the key.
Frightened they'll drink the surgical spirit. You do have surgical spirit. How many labourers do my members have? Don't be daft, man. I can always ask Andy Cranford.
3.
I see.
There's 2 away sick.
Sick?
Aye. There's been no accidents here.
I'm glad to hear it, Mr.
Beasley.
Glad to have met you, Mr. Beasley. You've been a great help.
Brilliant the way Manners thinks he's got this deal and Jack's done him a favour, and then he turns around and he says to him, well, actually, I'm closing you down. It doesn't matter how much you put up, you know, the prices for the people who work for you. You're going to be closed down anyway. So it's a really clever episode, and of course Matt Headley has no idea what's going on.
Very pally with Andy Cranford all of a sudden.
He's young and keen, Matt. You could do with a bit of encouragement.
What about the number 5 branch report?
First thing when I get back, Matt, honest.
I'll be in the office then.
Miss Laidlaw.
Shut the door.
Now, I want to send a wireless message, Miss Laidlaw.
Yes, Mr. Ford.
To the United States of America.
The United States?
Now, keep your voice down. Miss Laidlaw, you like Mr. Headley, don't you?
Oh, yes, Mr. Ford.
Well, I'm working on a little surprise for him to do with his work.
A pleasant surprise, I hope.
When he finds out, he'll be bowled over. Only, I can't explain it to you, but you'll keep it a secret, won't you?
Oh, yes, Mr. Ford.
Good, lass. Now, it's to Harold C. Limbacher.
Oh.
Limbacher, American Federation of Labour.
But how'll I send it?
We'll try the telephone. And if they won't have it, take it to the post office. Now, where was I?
Harold C. Limbacher, American Federation of Labour. Mr. Headley isn't leaving us, is he?
Believe me, Miss Laidlaw, as long as I'm here, Mr. Headley's here with me. Now, look, there's the address in the book. There, see? Now, here's the message. Dear friend and brother, fraternal greetings from the Amalgamated Fitters Union, Galashield,
It's going to cost a lot of money.
We're not discussing money, Miss Laidlaw. This is the solidarity of the working class.
It's funny with Miss Laidlaw and Matt Headley, isn't it? The way Matt has no idea what's going on about this wireless message. And yeah, I find that all really funny that Jack did this behind his back, but then he gets the credit for it, Matt Headley. I love the bit where he says that I need you, that the union needs you, this will prove it, your job was up for review, and this will keep you in your job. So he's thinking ahead as well, because he knows he isn't going to be at the Fitters Union forever. He wants his best friend, his best marrow, to be safe, protected, with a job. And obviously Matt later on does run the Fitters Union. He's nearly as good as Jack, isn't he? I mean, in terms of heart, spirit, fighting for the cause, Matt Headley, yeah, but in terms of brains, that's Jack Ford, isn't it? I'm not saying Jack didn't care. He did care about people, but he was also very clever with it. Matt can't keep up with it a lot of the time, can he? Because it all goes over his head, because he does things so quickly. He adapts to the situation. Matt finds this hard to deal with. But later on, it's interesting when he runs the Fitters Union, isn't it, Matt? And he's without Jack. And he's got his partner there. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he's a Red, isn't he? And Jack is very much on the opposite side of the fence now, isn't he? And that's brilliant later on, isn't it, when he's running the Fitters Union and Jack and Matt have a fight. I mean, such a brilliant series, isn't it? But back to this episode. I love everything about it, really. I mean, this is one of the best episodes, and I love the scene where he's talking to the man who runs Buell Hodge, and Jack saying that whatever made you think the war was over, and that's the name of the episode, of course.
Just honour your agreements, Mr. Buell, and you can be bigger than Henry Ford.
A week, then. Just give me a week, and I'll have the builders in round the clock.
You do that, Mr. Buell. In a week's time, you can have my men back.
Damn it, man, I've got commitments.
Ah, you have. Honour them, and we can all go back to work.
Suppose I hired non-union labour.
Scabs? The only men within a 50-mile radius who can work those machines of yours are my members. And you know it. In the army, were you?
Yes, I was. Joined in 1915. I served right to the end.
The end? Mr. Buell, whatever made you think the war is over?
You do feel a bit sorry for him, because if true, and I don't think he's lying, he's saying that some of the men who actually worked at his business were making more money than him, the boss. So he was very fair as a boss. But as it turned out, in the end, it all worked out, didn't it, for the best? And it was just brilliant the way Jack arranged all of that with Clubman's and finding about the fault in the machines, the milling machines, and then giving the credit to Matt Headley. And then, of course, Horatio Manners thinks that Jack's nothing to do with it. It was to do with Matt. And he's like, you better watch out for Mr. Headley. And Jack's like, I'm doing that already. Yeah. So it's just very clever, isn't it? How he plays Manners, how he gets credit, you know, for his best mate. And he helps him out. And I just really love this episode. I think it's got some of the best moments in it.
Well, it's more what I'm going to do for you, really.
Oh, you've done more than enough already. As I say, you don't owe me a thing.
I'm closing you down.
What?
And not your shipyard, just the factory on the trading estate.
Damn it, man, I'm expecting orders.
From Coventry, I doubt it, not when they hear this news.
All right, I'll put something on the basic. Not 10%, that's commercial suicide, but I might manage 5 or even 7.5.
You could offer 100%. I'd still close you down.
Let me give you a word of advice, Ford. Spite and business don't mix.
You mean I should be a good loser like you? You're the worst loser I've ever met, apart from myself.
Ah. You want something. Is that it?
What we down?
Money.
Used £1 notes.
If you like. Or why not an account on a Swiss bank?
For Buell Hodge.
There'll be others.
Maybe, but not this time, Manners.
Oh, there'll be no risk.
That's where you're wrong. You're using Klugman machines out at Wimborne, aren't you?
I believe so.
You know so. You know every damn thing you own.
Very well, I own 23 Klugmans.
Bought second-hand, bankrupt stock as new.
You're remarkably well informed.
I have to be. Those machines aren't safe.
Whose word have I for that, apart from yours?
Klugman's.
Go on.
After a while, say 20 months or 2 years, the safety grill goes off like a bomb.
Klugman's told you this?
The American Federation of Labour sent me their report. Fraternal help, as you might say.
You wrote to them?
Not a letter. A wireless message. You're going to have to get new grills fixed.
It'll take a week at least.
That's what Buell Hodge said and all.
You've boxed me rather neatly, haven't you?
Not me.
Oh, come forward.
Matt Headley.
Your assistant?
That's right.
That must have been something of an embarrassment for you.
I'll survive.
You usually do. Even so, I can see I shall have to keep an eye on Headley.
I'm doing that already. Thanks for the cigar.
Of course, you also have Tom Seaton, the gardener now. He had a very varied career, didn't he? Yeah, thief, miner, sheep stealer, gardener now. Yeah, he's doing Jack's garden now. And Matt isn't happy about this. I mean, this is the only time in the series where Matt gets really out of order. He's had too much to drink, and he has a go at Tom, because it was agreed that Matt would do the garden, but Tom's doing it now. But I love scenes like that in the show, because it's very real, it's very realistic. You do see things like that in real life. It doesn't sort of dance around the fact. Obviously, Matt liked to drink, didn't he? He liked to drop too much, as Jack said, but at the same time, more often than not, his heart was always in it. It wasn't he wasn't abusive very often, but on this occasion he had too many, and he saw Tom at the bar, and he gave him an earful, didn't he? He called him a scab. A scab's a scab. So yeah, I mean, I love the way it does that when the boat comes in. It doesn't dance around real life events that happen. And also, with the gardening, this is where Dolly falls in love with Tommy, Tom's son, and then eventually Tom, as we find out later. Yeah, I mean, this was a big twist in the show, wasn't it? That Tom and Dolly ended up together. Of course, that was after the bonfire. That's the next episode, I believe, when they eventually get together. Yeah, I mean, I suppose they are more suited because Jack is all about getting on. He wants to be the best of the best. He wants to live in a palace, as he promised Jessie all those years ago. Remember when he said about filling the palace with beer for Jessie's mum, Bella. Yeah, so Jack wants to get on. Dolly isn't particularly bothered. She's happy where she is. She doesn't really get all Jack's great ideas. She hasn't got his ambition, that's what it is. Whereas Jack, he wants to get on, he wants to go as high as he can. And Tom, I suppose, is more suited to Dolly. He's a gardener, very level sort of thing. It's not too out of this world, is it, to think they would be together. He's younger, I guess. But it is a terrible thing to do, isn't it, by Tom Seaton? But at the same time, is Jack really that bothered about it? I'm not sure if he is particularly bothered. She didn't have the baby in the end, of course. If she had the baby, back then that probably wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have got together. I think they would have been alright, actually, if they had a baby. I think they would have been alright, but sadly she had the miscarriage. It's just such a great drama, isn't it? So much happens in When the Boat Comes In.
This lot should come in handy for the bonfire.
Bonfire?
Aye, your vicar's organising it. St Thomas's Sunday School treat for the bairns. Bonfire to finish up.
You taking Tommy?
Me? We're chapel. You know that, Jack. I wouldn't mind seeing it go up, though. Hey, what in the world's a parson doing starting a bonfire?
Maybe he wants to act fine for a few chapel goers. Where is it?
Oh, it's that bit spare ground up the road. I got a canny bit stuff there already. Best place to get rid of this lot.
Do you think's best, Tom? You're oversee the garden. I see you've got your apprentice.
Aye. That missus of yours, she's daft on him.
Ah, he's a canny little fella, all right.
If you think I shouldn't bring him...
None of my business, Tom. Do what you think's best.
I like bringing him. He needs the fresh air. Ever since his mum died of TB, I've been wondering why I suppose it's in him and all.
Then you bring him.
You should be thinking of putting a few croissants in.
Should I?
I know we can let your hands on a few clippings.
You know, or your dar knows. You're not the one for doing deals in the Seaton family. Away.
What would I give today just to hear someone softly sing?
Alec Lawson, 3rd Battalion man. He must have heard I got home early. He got that lot of wipers.
Here, Jack, give him the snow.
Save your money, Tom. This'll do for Alec.
I never went to France, Jack. God knows enough people have told us. This is earned money. He's the only one entitled to say whether he wants it or not.
Ah, you're right, bonny lad. Thanks.
Ladies, women, sweethearts and wives. Well, I'm definitely wearing the correct hat for this one, aren't I? This is where Jack Ford and Dolly go to the dukerage of the Duke of Bedlington. You meet Lady Caroline, and she's a fantastic character, isn't she? And I think Jack and Lady Caroline really worked well together, and potentially they could have ended up together. Potentially, but they were from very different worlds. Her family had made it money-wise, whereas Jack is getting on, isn't he? He's trying to make it. He eventually does, of course, we find that out later. But at this stage, of course, Sir Horatio visits Jack and tells him that it's going to be at the Duke's place. It's not going to be at the Royal Saracen, which for Dolly, this was a big enough deal as it was. Being who she is, being what she was used to. She was a parlourmaid back then. She was used to serving them, wasn't she? And she doesn't like rich people. She calls them snobs. So, yeah, it was always going to be difficult for Dolly. And even Sir Horatio says you wouldn't put her through this if you loved her. He says, that you don't love her, you know.
What's all this dressmaking for, anyway? You going to open a salon or something? Madame Dolly's Modes?
For the dinner, you daft thing.
What dinner?
That posh do that you're taking us to at the Royal Saracen. I'll have to have a proper evening dress.
Oh, you will, but it won't be one you've made yourself.
Don't tell me you're going to buy us one.
Looks as if I'll have to. I gave up thieving a long time ago. Anyway, I don't think sheepskins have been worn this year.
Jack, they're terribly expensive.
You're my wife, Dolly. It's up to me to make sure you're as good as the rest.
Ah, Sir John and Lady Ford, eh, Jack?
Give us time, Bonnie lass. Don't rush us.
Where's Matt?
Yeah, there's a branch meeting. He's taking it.
I thought you
I've
were...
got a cold coming.
Oh, have you? Can I get you something?
I've got all I want, and it's not a cold. Matt will manage. I just fancied a bit cuddle with a dressmaker, that's all.
Oh, did you?
I did.
You seen anything of the Seatons, Jack?
I saw Bella pushing Bill home when I left the office. Why?
I think you know why.
Oh, so you've heard, have you?
Aye. Tom told us when he was doing the garden. Jessie Ashton's had a baby.
Arthur William Ashton, poor little clot.
Jack, that's not a nice thing to see.
Isn't it? Suppose he takes after his father. You're thinking you're second best again, is that it?
I can't help it, Jack. You know I can't. Because it's true.
Is it?
You know it is.
It better not be, Pet, because if it is, we've got no life at all.
Of course, Dolly is making a dress for the dinner party, but Jack knows this isn't good enough, and he buys her an amazing dress for £6, I think. So, yeah, that was a bargain. Of course, the currency was very different back then. I think she looks really nice in it, to be fair. It was a good choice of dress. The one she was making, yeah, that wasn't bad, but I think the classier option was better, personally. But she doesn't like that. And she doesn't like the opal that Jack gives her from a Russian countess. This all goes back to the ring issue. Of course, Jack Ford bought a ring for Jessie Seaton. He never got to give it her. He gave it to Dolly instead because she got pregnant. That was the deal they made. And again, she thinks that she's second best because he didn't get it for her originally. She also doesn't like the fact that he had all this money. He could have bought her own ring, but he didn't. But as Jack says, he did it out of a fitter's wages at the time. And the stuff he had, I love his little box with all his possessions in, like his pocket watch and things that are valuable. And as he says, he wanted to use this money to get on, and he really did, didn't he? And it was for the benefit of Dolly as well, and it was for the benefit of her brother Matt Headley. It wasn't just for him personally. She didn't starve, did she? Not for long. She was treated to a very nice life, much better than I think what she would have had if she didn't have Jack. But I suppose they didn't seem very loving much, I suppose. They didn't have a very loving relationship. But for the time period, I guess things like that were fairly normal, if I'm honest. But yeah, she doesn't like the opal. And then, of course, later on, when Jack's buying the land from Lady Caroline, doesn't he call it like the opal, something like that, the Opal Trust Foundation? Very clever to get this land where Mandrake House is. And then eventually, of course, he explodes it so that Sir Horatio Manners can buy the land. And yeah, but the problem is, of course, this building is a historical work of art. I think it's Vanbrugh, isn't it? I love that episode as well, where he blows up Mandrake House. I mean, it took a lot of balls to do that, didn't it? And Jack, brilliant. And Lady Caroline, him and Lady Caroline seem to work very well together as a team. Later on, yeah, they kind of fall out. But originally, you're even thinking, are they going to get together potentially? But I think they're from very different worlds, aren't they? I think Jack does mention marriage, but she's like, not to me. So, yeah, but I think they did like each other quite a lot, actually. And the lady who plays Lady Caroline, escapes me her real name, actress name, I thought she was very good, the first one. The second one, she was good, but not as good. I thought the first original Lady Caroline was the best for me. And they have a really great relationship, I think, on screen. They're both very clever. Lady Caroline says that Jack is like her husband. She's a widower now. And, of course, the Duke of Bedlington, I think he's a very good character as well. He's pretending that he doesn't get things, I think. He's doing that thing when people get old. He's pretending he's not all there, but I think he is really. I think it's that sort of thing. And he likes Jack. You know, he invites him round to go shooting. And as Lady Caroline says, her father thinks that, you know, Jack is like their remote ancestors, like what they would have been like before they got rich. And I think a later episode, is it The Simple Pleasures of the Rich? Or maybe it's not called that, but that's what the Duke calls it, The Simple Pleasures of the Rich. And Jack fits in this world. He really does. And it's great seeing his journey from where he was originally as Sergeant Jack Ford to get up to this point.
Well, they won't be so very bad, will they, Sir Horry?
None of them actually eat with their fingers. Not even the trade unionist.
The what? Oh, no. No. Sorry, Manners. Willing to help. But we can't have the Reds in. Well, I'll have to swallow the mulligatawny and the tin pineapple and vomit in decent privacy like the Romans. Was the Romans, wasn't it?
Yes. They used a place called the Vomitorium, but that was for between courses.
You know, often used to wonder what all those governesses taught you. Well, now we know.
Ford, the trade unionist, is really quite civilized. I've seen him in action in a place not unlike this. And I know.
Yes, but if he's a Red.
He isn't. He'll be with us on this.
Oh, I'm not sure I like that either. Chap should play for his own side.
He'll do that, all right. More work for his members if we get the trading estate going. His wife may be a problem.
Not a lady, I take it.
A parlourmaid.
Well, at least she'll know about knives and forks.
Well, but anyway, Caroline can trot her out with the other mares while we talk business over the port.
One delight after another. Oh, Daddy was sweet to me.
This fella Ford, he'll be no trouble.
I don't think so. But if he is, then God help us.
You know, Sir Horry, you sound almost afraid of him.
It's taken me a long time to realize it, but I rather think I am.
So it's a very interesting episode, this one. You have classes of people, don't you? And it's very unfortunate what happens to Dolly, but you can see it's going to happen. She reacts to it, doesn't she? She doesn't laugh it off or say something clever. She just storms out of the room and calls them bloody snobs. Lady Caroline confronts her about this, and she later tells Jack Ford that Dolly is afraid of him.
Yes, that was the year George bought the Gainsborough. I don't suppose you know what a Gainsborough is either.
No, I don't. But I know what you are. You're a bloody snob.
Excuse me, ladies. Bitches, aren't they?
Sorry.
Oh, please. No apologies. I only wish I had your courage. Oh, don't, my dear. It isn't the end of the world.
It is for me. When Jack finds out.
Your husband? Well, shall I fetch him?
Oh, no. Just let us go. Please, madam. Just let us go.
And she knows that she's a parlourmaid because Dolly calls her madam. And Lady Caroline also comments that Dolly is not a lady. So it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, with Horatio, he did say about Dolly that she might be a problem in the future, and he was right about that. but Jack married her because she got pregnant. That was the only reason. It was a shotgun wedding, wasn't it? He wanted to be with Jessie. I think it would have worked, him and Jessie, but we'll never know, do we? We don't know. They had very different political views, didn't they? Jack was all about getting on, whereas Jessie wanted to help everyone. Jack wanted to help people, but mostly in his inner circle, whereas Jessie wanted to help everyone. But this episode, I love the clash of cultures, and with Dolly, she just doesn't really fit in that world, and she isn't really making much of an effort to try and fit in. She doesn't want to be honest. I mean, remember when she's having that dessert and it completely falls apart, and the biddy in the drawing room, as Jack calls them, laughs that her dessert is completely kaput. But I love this episode. I think it's a really good one. But I think with Dolly and Jack, was it ever going to work? I think it could have worked if they had a baby, but that didn't happen. Sadly, she had a miscarriage. And later, of course, she ends up with Tom Seaton. She's in love with Tommy, and she likes Tom as well. And yeah, they eventually run off, don't they? After Dolly runs away, she knows that this is the end. Although maybe it wouldn't have been if she chose differently, but she wanted to go with Tom, and it's interesting, it all has to happen so quick, doesn't it? These days it wouldn't be like that. Not really. I don't think you'd run off and then you'd be with somebody instantly. I know it's a TV show, but I suppose back then you had to make definite choices.
Mr. Ford?
Lady Caroline?
I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news for you. Your wife's gone home.
Those biddies in the drawing room.
I call them bitches. Biddies is much better.
I better get after her.
I shouldn't. She's much too afraid of you.
Afraid?
She was a parlour maid, wasn't she?
She told you?
She called me madam. It was the way she said it.
Well, she's not a parlour maid now.
She's not a lady either. But then that's her choice, Mr. Ford. Not yours. Hello, Jack.
Jessie, here's to your band.
Thanks. You're looking very grand.
Been dining with the Duke, Rayburn Castle.
You mean it?
It's true. Me and the wife.
Is she here?
No, she left early.
I see.
Aye, maybe you do. You're a clever girl, Jessie Seaton.
I don't want your troubles, Jack.
Neither do I, but I've got 'em. Troubles of your own, have you?
I came to hear Jimmy Maxton speak. I'm just waiting for my husband to take me home.
The socialist troubles, are they?
You're a clever one and all, Jack Ford.
Aye, and a fat lot of good it did either of us.
That'll do, Jack.
It'll have to, won't it? Here. Give your bairn this from me. This won't do, Ashton, won't do at all. Leaving your wife alone at this time of night. You wouldn't believe the riffraff that gets in here.
Mr. Ford, isn't it?
That's right.
Come to see the fun, have you?
Fun? Not tonight, Bonnie lad. I reckon I've seen it.
Dance to the daddy, sing to the mommy. Dance to the daddy, to the mommy, sing. Thou shalt have the fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have the fishy when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy. Thou shalt have a haddock when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy. Thou shalt have a bloater when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy. Thou shalt have a mackerel when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little ishy. Thou shalt have a salmon when the boat comes in.
Hello everyone, welcome to the When the Boat Comes In podcast. We're now speaking about the episode after the bonfire. This is the aftermath of the Duke of Bedlington's dinner party, isn't it? Where Jack Ford got many fitters' jobs for the Union, but Dolly ran away, his wife. She couldn't take this joke. Well, not a joke, but not a very nice thing was said to her at the dinner party by one of the biddies in the drawing room, yeah, as Jack puts it, and she ran away into the arms of Tom Seaton, and Tom did the catch-in, as Jack says. And yeah, I mean, it's very tough on Jack, isn't it? Because really, one of his best mates has betrayed him, really. But at the same time, he doesn't really seem that bothered about losing Dolly, if you're honest about it. If you watch this episode, there's an example where he gets drunk, and actually Matt says to him, "You don't sound sad, you sound happy. You sound like you're celebrating." He kind of puts it that way. So I don't think Jack is that bothered that he has to get rid of Dolly. He's moving on to bigger and better things. And Dolly even says in one of the episodes that with Jack, he was someone she got lumbered with. I think it is in this episode. She says that to her brother Matt, and it's funny how Matt's really kind of worried about his friendship with Jack. They've been friends since the war, and now they work together at the Fitters Union. Matt's Jack's assistant, so he's worried how this will affect their friendship. But of course. It doesn't affect it at all, does it?
Lost prospects in London, chance of a lifetime, but he'd given his word. He stood by. Then he started again from the bottom.
From prison.
All right then, from prison. But look where he is now. He took us both with him.
He took you, Matt. I'm just something he got landed with.
Dolly, I know he's got his faults. We all have. But he's a good man. A generous man. He'll give you his last penny.
I want nothing from him. He hates me.
Hate? You're talking like the pictures.
I am not, man. He does.
Well, I've never seen it.
You're not with him all the time, are you? He wants rid of us.
Don't talk daft. You're his wife.
His wife, aye. But you're the one that fetched us back.
In the war.
God, Matt, not that bloody war again.
Listen, will ya? When I first joined, I knew nought. And drunk more often than not. Never out of trouble. Till Jack took us in hand. He's my corporal then. Sorted us out. Looked after us. If it hadn't been for Jack, I'd have been dead. That's the kind of man he is, a pal. A real pal.
Well, maybe you're the one that should have married him then.
Brotherly love, Matt.
When Jack returns from the party, you see the opal that he gave Dolly, and she wasn't happy about this. And this all stems, and I do kind of understand it, because with women, buying your own ring and all that, it's very important, isn't it? If it was meant to be for somebody else, I do kind of get that. But with this opal, yeah, it did belong to somebody else. But it's beautiful, isn't it? Obviously, because Lady Caroline wants it. She must understand what a lovely thing it is. But to Dolly, it's just another example of the ring. Because, of course, Jack didn't buy Dolly's own wedding ring. He bought it, of course, for Jessie Seaton. That never happened. That's why it was slack when he bought it. And she'd have to get it resized, rather. But yeah, she sees this opal as another example of Jack, not looking after her. Yeah, she does in a strange way. But of course, Lady Caroline wants it, and this is all to do with the Manners deal to get Mandrake House. Well, originally, Manners wants Jack to get the land for Manners from Lady Caroline, but at this point we don't realise that Lady Caroline has the land to begin with. I think Manners thought it was the Duke of Bedlington's, and then Jack, of course, finds out that where Mandrake House is, the land there is owned by Lady Caroline. She takes a shine to the opal, so it's kind of part of the deal that she gets the opal as well as Jack giving her a better offer on the land.
I thought your wife looked very pretty at Daddy's little dinner.
She did.
An enchanting dress, which I'm quite sure you chose, and a quite mouth-watering opal. Rather a mistake to call yourself the Opal Land Corporation, wasn't it?
Aye, it was. What are you going to do?
Sell, why not? Horry will be furious.
Aye, he will.
You're not scared of him?
Terrified.
That's funny. He said he felt the same about you.
Well, that's all right then.
I also really like the part where Jack has too much to drink and he wants to go up the stairs, but he's finding this a bit of an obstacle, isn't he, because he's had a few. And it's really funny. Well, I think it's great. I think it's a great example of Jack Ford. He falls down the stairs, and of course Matt wants to help him. But Jack says, "I'll manage. I always have, and I always will." And that is Jack Ford. He'll manage.
I said I'll manage. I always have, and I always will.
Of course, Tom meets Dolly late at night, and I think it's funny the way back then things had to be decided very quickly, didn't they? Of course, she's a married woman, so this is why. But yeah, everything has to be decided quickly that Jack wants to be with Tom. I think Dolly says to Tom, "You're not playing with us, are you?" Because obviously she's in a tough spot now because, well, it's of her own making, though, isn't it? It's of they've both done it, so it's their own fault. But Jack's so nice about this, really. Not to begin with, not in this episode. What he does at the end of this episode, I think it's brilliant. It's one of my favourite endings. But after this episode, Jack is nice about it. He didn't have to be like this. He sort of arranges for him to be seen with a chorus girl, I believe, like a weekend at a holiday place by the seaside, so that Dolly's has an alibi that Jack was cheating on her. Otherwise, back then, if you were a woman and it was the other way around, it was terrible. Yeah, it was really bad. So in that respect, Jack was really good to Dolly and Tom. And it's funny when Tom comes over to see Matt and Jack. And with Tom, yeah, it's interesting. This is the first point where I don't really sympathise with what he's done, if I'm honest. All the other things he's done up to this point, I get. You know, like he had to become a scab, you know, to help save his wife. That didn't work out. Becoming a thief. Yeah, it was similar, wasn't it? Sheep stealing, the same. But to betray his best friend or one of his good friends, yeah, it's not great, is it? But at the same time, Jack wasn't that bothered. He didn't put up much of a fight about losing Dolly. I think if he wanted to keep her, he could have, but he didn't really try. So maybe he did him a favour, to be honest. Yeah. And Tom's really happy about this. And it's funny, Bill doesn't have a problem, his father, with this at all, because he says the same thing, that she's not what Jack needs where he's going. He's going to go to the top. So, yeah, it's interesting. Of course, Bella finds out about Tom. Tom and Dolly, and she's the sharp one, isn't she? It's funny because he meets her late at night, and he says it's about a gardening job. I mean, I think from that moment she knew that it wasn't a gardening job. But then she looks out the window and she says, "This chap's wearing a skirt." Yeah.
Funny. You couldn't see?
Not to be sure.
You get yourself a pair of glasses, ma'am.
For God's sake, woman! Tom Seaton, you tell your man the truth. Who were you out with?
Just a lass.
A lass with no name?
Not for you. Not yet.
You're doing something wrong, I know you are.
I don't think so. Now it's late, ma'am.
You just hold on a minute. Well, go to bed.
I want to know what...
You heard what I said. Did you sell away off to bed?
I'll hit you.
Aye. You can still hit.
I'm sorry.
I'll live.
It's no use hitting grown men. I'll still go looking for trouble.
And the part I like is when Tom comes round to see Jack and he says to him, I don't think you'll have many contracts left after they find out that you take care of the wife as well as the gardening. I thought that was very funny. I mean, in this episode, you see what was quoted before in previous episodes, I think from Jesse. He knows how to hurt, and he does in this episode to, spectacular effect.
So, she's left me for you, is that it?
That's right.
Can you keep her?
I'm in work.
Why, the gardening? Under the circumstances, I think you and me better cancel our contract, don't you? Come to think of it, there mightn't be all that many contracts still standing. Not when folks find out you take care of the wife as well as the garden.
Of course, Lady Caroline is behind this land deal, or rather Jack finds out she's the one to buy the land off of. She gets the opal for selling the land to Jack. And it's quite funny when she goes back to his house. And she's a shrewd one. She knows things. She doesn't fall for things. And when Jack gives his whole "I could have dined at the Savile" speech, and then he died. It's really funny the way Lady Caroline's like, you've said that before. You're very good at it. Yeah. So she doesn't fall for it for 1 second. But I think she appreciates it the same.
Horry Manners' son was a company commander. My company commander. Good captain, nice man. He copped it at the Somme, poor devil. Shell burst. I held him in my arms and he looked at me and he said, "What am I doing here, Sergeant?" I said I'd dine at the Savile. And then he died.
You really do that awfully well, don't you?
It's true.
I believe you, bonny lad. But you still do it awfully well.
I do, don't I?
And of course they do share a couple of kisses in this episode, I believe, or maybe one. And yeah, you're thinking maybe they can get together, but they are from very different worlds, aren't they? She's a lady, of course, and Jack's a self-made man. But of course, as she says, in her family, they find him interesting because they believe he would have been like one of their remote ancestors who was just starting to make money. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think the Duke of Bedington really likes Jack. I think Lady Caroline says that he's good for his health. yeah, seeing him. So yeah, I mean, they really work well together up to this point and a bit later. It's only in the third series when things get a bit heated. This involves another family member, doesn't it? We'll come on to that when it comes up. But at this point, they seem like a really good partnership, to be honest.
Good advice about the land, I thought. I should take it if I were you.
I intend to. Daddy, before you came, he told me that his wife had run away.
Good Lord. And he was being so helpful about my servant problem.
Yes, wasn't he?
Jesse tells Billy that he must pay his debts back to the family. Of course, the debt started when he became a doctor, because back then there were no grants or anything like that. Basically, the family funded his education to go to university to become a doctor, and now he's working for Dr. Stoker for free. So Jesse says, well, you can do both. Basically, you can work for Dr. Stoker and you can work for Jack at the Fitters Union. And it's good that he starts to pay back his debt, rather, to the family. It's hard for him, because obviously he's not making tremendous money. He's making good money, but that's his own bed, isn't it? He's made it, basically. Yeah, it's good that he starts paying back his debt to the family, because they must have really struggled for years and years and years to put him through the education. But I don't like the way he sort of pays them really grudgingly. Like when he gets his money out to give it to Tom, he gives him one note to begin with, and then Tom's like, "Oh, come on," and then he gives him more. But he just does it in such a, you know, like you know, a moth has come out of his wallet. It's kind of like that. It's like, yeah. So it's good he starts paying back his debts, but he's a bit stingy, isn't he, Billy? Yeah.
Work for money?
As long as it's needed.
Money for the clinic?
Well, of course.
None for Dad and Tom and me?
If I have to...
Have to? Of course you have to. It's a debt.
All right then, half for the family, half for the clinic.
None for Dr. Seaton?
There's nothing I need.
Then you're a very lucky man. It's nearly time for his feed. I'll tell Mum and Dad.
Jess, I was wondering...
Wondering what?
There's not many jobs open to us around here, even less since I joined the clinic.
Go on.
The Fitters Union. Jack Ford's still looking for a doctor for the compensation cases. Well, at least that's what I heard. I thought... Well, I just wondered if...
If I'd go and speak for you again... You've got a nerve.
Yes, I know I have. When you fight poverty and sickness the way I do, it's the first thing you need.
Jack visits the Seatons, and Bella is shocked, and so is Jessie, about Tom and Dolly running off together. Bill isn't that bothered, I don't think, to be honest. But yeah, it seems like Jack's doing Tom and Dolly a favour at this moment, because he's found jobs for them. He's found a job for Dolly as a parlour maid, and he's found a job for Tom as a gardener, because, as Jack said earlier, back then, if you was a fornicator, you know, you wouldn't get jobs. You know, it's a different age now, isn't it? I don't think that would happen now. That wouldn't affect your contract. But back then, it did. You know, take care of the missus as well as the garden. Yeah, and all that. I thought that was funny when Jack said that. But with this family meeting, I guess the big highlight is when Jessie says about Jack calling Tom Mara. And Jessie's like, "I didn't like the way he called you Mara." Yeah, so she knows Jack inside out, and as she said in a previous episode, he knows how to hurt. So, yeah, I loved it, personally. I thought they deserved it. They really did.
Well, it's like this, Mara. There's a gardener's job at the castle if you wanted. Place for a parliamentary bailiffs. 3-room cottage thrown in. And the that'll be good for young Tommy and all. Do you want it?
Why, of course I want it, but...
But what, Mara?
I thought you'd come to knock me block off.
I didn't like the way he called you Mara.
But to be honest, when you watch it, do you feel sorry for Tom and Dolly? I don't. Not really, because they've made this mess. And it's great the way he stitches them up, to be honest. It always makes me laugh, particularly the ending. Yeah, of course. It doesn't last very long either. Because of Lady Caroline, she intervenes. If she didn't, maybe they would have remained in the same situation. Because basically, he gets a job for Dolly as a parlour maid at another house that the Duke of Bedlington knows. And he also gets a job for Tom as a gardener, working for a head gardener at the Duke of Bedlington's place. But the only thing is, they're being kept apart physically, because a parlour maid can't be with a man. So, yeah, he really stitches them up, but it's really funny, isn't it? I love the end scene where Jack's on his horse and he oversees Tom being given a rollicking by the chief gardener, and then he goes to the house and Dolly answers the door, and she's the parlour maid, and she's like, "Yes, sir." I thought that was brilliant. I think they deserved it, to be honest. Yeah, he didn't treat her bad, did he, Jack? He treated her good. I suppose there wasn't that romantic spark between them. He didn't want to be with her. He just liked being with her for other reasons, didn't he? Let's be honest. But, yeah, I did like what Jack did to Tom and Dolly. I think they deserved it.
Enough is enough.
Lady Caroline Summers and Mr. Ford to see Mr. Armstrong. I think you'll find we're expected. Well, girl?
Yes, sir. Of course, sir.
Hello and welcome to the When the Boat Comes In podcast, speaking about the episode A Reef With Our Names On. Yeah, I mean, with this episode, to be honest, the main theme of it is that Dolly's relation has a very bad accident at work. But the thing is, he did go and see Billy, the doctor, and he tells him that he has pleurisy. But the thing is, he needs to keep working to support his children.
Sit down, man. You can't work with what you've got.
I could walk a read before I knew where it was. Apart from the breathing, like.
You're going to have to stop, Mr. Mather.
Yeah, I gotta stop, Doctor. I've got forward bands.
You've got to stop. You could die, man.
Aye. I survived Passchendaele. And the Somme. I'll survive this.
He suffered a lot, this man. And he just had a great attitude. I loved his attitude. He was just like, I'll get through it. I'll be fine. I've survived this. I think that is a trait that is kind of undervalued these days. Certainly no victimization back then at all was there. I know that's another side of it. You know, he should have been helped more, definitely. They called it A1 in the war when you got signed off. I think it was for compensation, is that right? And at this point, he hasn't got it, even though he was shot, I believe.
Who was it? Chap called Stan Mather. Works at Lewis Bishop's. Or did.
Lewis Bishop, Manners Yard.
Aye. Manners would like it if you start a fight with him.
Manners will have to lump at them. Who's this Mather?
He's a cousin of our Dolly's first husband.
He has a very bad accident, and in the end he does end up dying. But it's very funny with Billy because he's very much into socialism and helping people, but at this moment where he thinks he might lose his job if somebody finds out that he wasn't fit for work, he really crumbles, doesn't he? He isn't going to help him, but it's very clever what Jack does, and all of his friends, all of these friends that this man has, they basically cover for him. There's a policeman that covers for him, even his boss at work. Jack goes to see him, and they all cover for this man because he was a stand-up guy. He fought in the war.
And you investigated what happened?
Yes, I did. Accident, that's what it was. And if the other side tries suggesting different, they can forget it. I was there, I know. You can call me if you want.
Well, only if I have to. I know what it's like.
We all know what it's like. But Stan Mather's one of the best. Good soldier, good pal, good man. And I want to see right done by him. I mean that.
But by the end of the episode, that's really funny when he sees Jack. Well, he's dying, that's not funny. But Jack winks at him. You were signed off A1. And then he winks, and then the other guy winks back at him. And of course, the name with the reef on, this is all about Dolly, because he's a relation of hers. And Jack says at the end of the episode, it's going to be a reef with our names on. Because obviously back then, if you divorced somebody, it was shame on the family, wasn't it, really? So it's a very good episode, yeah. And you really see Jack working for the union, working for workers' rights in this episode. And really, he always delivered.
In the army, weren't you?
Right through.
So was Whiteworth, Somme, Cambrai. I got shot, you know.
I do know. But you were discharged A1. Never seen another doctor from that day to this. Right, Stan?
Right, Jack.
And yeah, it's funny in this episode, I mentioned Billy, again, showing why some people don't like his character, in my opinion. I talked about his stinginess in the previous episode. In this episode, yeah, he's worried about his own skin, basically. He's not worried about this man who fought in the war and he's got kids to raise and all the rest of it. He's worried about saving his own skin. But I love the part where Jack's like, I'll shop you. He says that he'll write to his union, the doctors' union, saying that he sent this man to work and he wasn't fit for work, and then he had an accident that resulted in him dying. So that's very clever from Jack, and I love the way Matt's laughing. He's like, that's brilliant. But Billy deserved it. He really did. I thought that was bad from Billy. And, you know, he's meant to have these high beliefs about helping people, and the first sign that it may affect him, he cowards away from it. So I did love the way Jack handled that situation.
Oh, no, it's no good. I mean, this could finish us. I can't do it, Jack.
I think you can. And I'll tell you for why. Because if you don't, I'll shop you.
Don't talk daft. You can't.
Oh, yes, I can. I'll write to the, what's your union called again? Oh, aye, the British Medical Association. And I'll tell them I'm not satisfied with you. And I'll tell them why. Because 4 days ago, you let a man with pleurisy go back to work. And because he was ill, he had an accident. And it killed him.
Jackman, that's marvellous.
You'd do that?
You know I would. Let's have those case notes, bunny lad.
At the end of the episode, you see a scene between Jack and Dolly, and they're basically reminiscing a bit about their relationship and what happened, but it's mostly about Stan. That's the name of the guy who sadly died from his injuries at work. He had pleurisy as well, but Jack's got wonderful compensation for him. Well, the best he could get. We don't know how much exactly, but potentially he would have got nothing. He's made it out that he was A1 after the war, so now it means that he can get what he deserves, because, you know, he does deserve it. If you saw his injuries when he was being examined by Billy, you know, he deserves he deserved compensation for that anyway. I think Stan even said, like, after he got that wound, they sent him off to war the next day, or like a couple of days later. So unbelievable, isn't it? But that's what things were like back then. Yeah. But yeah, Jack and Dolly do reminisce a bit, but it's mostly that Jack says to Dolly, the reef is going to have our names on for Stan, because as I mentioned earlier, back then, divorce was a terrible thing. It brought shame on the family, and he didn't want that, and I thought that was nice.
Bad news.
Bert's cousin.
Stan Mather, aye.
Oh, Matt wrote and told us. How is he?
Dying, maybe dead.
He was a lovely fella.
Aye, he was. And a real man and all.
He's left a widow and bairns.
4.
Poor soul. Will you get them anything? Compensation, like?
Every penny I can.
She'll need it.
Aye, she will, and she'll get it. I went to see him in the hospital. He talked about you. Said what a bonny lass you were. He thought we were still together. I didn't tell him different.
I'm glad. If he dies, you'll let us know.
Of course.
I want to send a wreath.
No. Leave that to me. A wreath with our names on.
Hello and welcome to the When the Boat Comes In podcast, speaking about the episode, what it was like in Murmansk. It's a very good episode. There's 2 themes of this episode. First of all, you got Jimmy the thief. Yeah, Jimmy's a young lad who's thieving for his mother, basically on her orders, really. She's a widower, yes, but she isn't exactly living a life of poverty. It doesn't seem that way. I mean, he even nicks bottles of gin for her. So, yeah, but eventually he ends up trying to steal from Jack, and that's a huge mistake. We'll talk about that later. The other theme of this episode is all to do with politics. Stan Little and also Geordie Watson want Jack Ford to speak at one of their meetings for the Labour Party so that he can get in. And eventually Jack does speak for Geordie Watson. But to begin with, it's quite funny. Stan comes to visit Jack, and he comes empty-handed, as Jack says, so he doesn't get anything in return. And that was the way of the world, and I still think it is, actually. You give me something and I'll give you something. It's very much like that.
Why, promises is no good. We want votes. Shipyard votes. We can't get them, but you can. Jack, I want you to speak for him.
Oh, I'm pretty busy, Stan.
Why, we're all busy, but why, you are a leader. I mean, like Jody, you've got obligations.
I'm an expert, Stan. Industry's my game, not politics.
Why, I know, but why the lads will listen to you?
The lads will listen to anybody that tells them what they want to hear. I'm sorry, Stan. Give Jody my regards and tell him I'll be voting for him.
Stan hasn't got the brains for this, really. He's like a child, really, compared to Jack. Yeah, he just doesn't understand this concept. He thinks that Jack will just do it out of the goodness of his heart, but, you know, why would he? To be honest, it's, as I say, a yin for a yang. You give me something, I'll give you something. So, yeah, Stan comes to visit him, doesn't really convince Jack of anything. But then you got Mrs. Burns, I believe was her name, and Jessie Seaton, of course, coming to visit Jack, saying the same thing. And basically, she's buttering him up, isn't she? Giving him lots of praise, saying about when he spoke after he came out of prison, and also before he went to prison in the court. She was saying about how everybody applauded, and Jessie says about him being an orator, and Jack's like, Orator Ford. Yeah, I spoke about this in the previous episode, didn't I? I couldn't remember what episode it was, but it was the following one, so I must have remembered somewhere in the back of my head. But yeah, I think this convinced Jack a lot more than what Stan did before.
We want you to address a few meetings.
Talk to a hall full of women, I'd be terrified.
Not just women, Mr. Ford. We don't believe in that.
What do you believe in then, Mrs. Ashton?
Men and women working together. Equal partners, that's what we believe in. Working for social justice. That's right.
But you want a man to speak to you?
We want an orator. Man or woman, doesn't matter.
That's what I am. An orator.
When you want to be, you know you are.
If you don't mind, Mrs. Ashton, I think I'd rather hear Mrs. Burns tell it.
We got to talking in the committee rooms. Geordie Watson's a good man. Talks well, means well.
Are we coming to the word but, Mrs. Burns?
Let her finish.
There's no fire there, Mr. Ford. The words don't lift you. Now I've heard you speak.
Have you?
Ah, you have. A couple of years back, that would be. You went to prison for it. No offence meant, Mr. Ford.
None taken, Mrs. Burns. Go on.
You'd been helping a poor widow on her bends. The landlord was going to take her furniture because she hadn't paid her rent. Only you stepped in and took it first. Saved it for her. And there in court you stood up and made a speech. And there we all were listening. And by the time you finished, we were all up on our feet and cheering. And neither the magistrates nor the bobbies could stop us.
And I went to prison.
Ah, you did. But you're out now and working for us again. Only we need to hear you, Mr. Ford. We need your words. If you don't...
I'm listening.
I don't think Geordie Watson will get in. He's never had your gift.
But of course, eventually, Jack agrees once a deal is struck. And that's the way of the world, isn't it? You give me something, I give you something. And basically, he wants Matt to become a counsellor and a GP. They can't guarantee the GP, but they'll try for it, apparently. So in principle, he's done a deal for speaking for Geordie Watson, in principle. But whether this happened or not, I can't remember yet at this stage. I know later on, of course, Matt becomes the main guy at the Fitters Union, yes. But I can't remember politics really coming into it much for Matt. Or Jack, actually. But he does eventually speak for them. And it's brilliant, isn't it? It's a great speech anyway, but the icing on top of the cake is that nobody near the end of the speech puts their hands up, but then 5 or 6 people do. when Jack wants them to. And this is because he's paid them off. Yeah, very clever. And I love what he says to Jesse Seaton. That's just so brilliant. I always laugh. It's just so clever. And yeah, people could be manipulated like that back then very easily, I think. Especially people who didn't have much. You know, if you'd say, oh, I'll give you 5 bob or whatever the currency was back then, they do it. They just got to put their hands up. Very clever from Jack. And it was great timing, wasn't it, when they put their hands up? Brilliant. Loved it.
So I want to appeal to you, friends. No. I want more than that. I want a solemn promise from each and every one of you. I want you to swear. I want your Bible oath. I want you to tell me, as you hope for salvation, that you will do what I ask. I don't want idle promises. I want your sacred word. Now then, who's willing to give me that word? God's honor, that come what may, you will go to the polls and vote for Geordie Watson. If it rains, if it sleets, if it snows, if you've got to crawl, if you've got to get your friends to carry you. Now, who among you is willing to give me your sacred word? Not one. Oh, ye of little faith.
I will.
And me.
Me too.
I will.
God bless you, friends. God bless you.
You were great, Jack. Marvellous, even. But you weren't real.
You didn't ask for reality, Bonnie lass. You asked for votes. You've got 'em.
Yes, I should say thank you, and I do. All the same, I'm glad it's not your name on the ballot paper.
Never mind, thanks. You owe me 6 bob.
6 shillings? What for?
The first 6 hands that went up cost me a bob each. No, Geordie Watson shouldn't hear about bribery. Could stand little to have a fit. This one's on the house, Mrs. Ashton.
Of course, Arthur and Jesse are very different politically, aren't they, Mr. Ashton and Jesse? Obviously, Jesse is Labour and Mr. Ashton is Conservatives. And yeah, it's quite funny, the scene in the house where, first of all, you have Jesse putting up a poster for Geordie Watson, Labour, and then you have Mr. Ashton putting up a poster for the Conservatives, for King and Country, back then. Yeah, I find this really funny, and it is surprising how they ever got together in the first place. I know it was a deal, wasn't it? It was to help her family, basically, because they're polar opposites, aren't they, particularly politically. I suppose they just didn't talk about those sorts of things, but in this episode they do. When Arthur said he was hungry, and then Jesse's like, "You've never starved in your life." It's quite funny. Yeah. But I think that's really funny, the way they both put posters up, and it shows you the polar opposites they have as a couple, their beliefs, and it's very funny. Yeah.
Good evening, my dear. You're rather late.
Where's Mrs. Charlton?
I sent her home.
Did she give the baby his bottle?
No, I did that. Everything's been attended to. We can have our row in peace.
You had no right, absolutely no right.
But I had, Jessie.
Making me a laughing stock.
Then there are 2 of us.
Don't be ridiculous.
Laughing stocks are always ridiculous.
Why should you think you're a... Because of Jack.
Because of Jack. Second best can't help but be ridiculous. If it's shown to be second best. I believe in my party too, you know.
King and country. The rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate.
If you like.
You should remember how it goes on, Arthur. God made them high or lowly and ordered their estate. Estate means their station in life. It means if you're born poor, you stay poor.
Some of us, most of us, will always be poor.
You and I, we're not in the rich man's castle, but we're not begging at his gate either. You should be grateful for that. It gives you the financial security you need.
For what?
To tear down the things I hold sacred.
Arthur, please. I'll beg you if you like. Please take down that poster.
You corrected me quite rightly today. I spoke of my house and you pointed out that it's ours. In our house, each of us is entitled to his or her political beliefs. So long as we both live in it.
Another funny part of this episode is that Jack is fed up of eating eggs, basically. That's the only thing Matt can cook. And they're going to get a new cook. And she's a very good character, Sarah Litton. Brilliant character, in fact. Eventually she does end up with Matt, doesn't she? And it's very funny because they're courting at this stage. I love that old-fashioned word. My nan used to say that. Are you courting? Yeah. And Jack knows about it, doesn't he? But they're trying to pretend they're not. And Sarah, it shows you how things have changed. Or, mind you, I suppose, yeah, you would be the talk of the town. She says, I wouldn't stay with two men in a house. You know, I'd be the talk of the town. Yeah, it's quite funny. Yeah. But she lost her other job as a skivvy for talking back. And Jack's like, yeah, I've been known to do that as well. But she's a brilliant character, Sarah Litton. She really is. And she stays a lot longer than you would think she would, really. She's actually in the last series, whereas Matt isn't. We'll talk about that another time. But yeah, she's the only character from the original series, really, that's in the last series, apart from the last 2 episodes, is it? When Billy and Jesse are back in it, in the final series. But Sarah stays around for a long time, and she is a really good character, funny, and intelligent as well. And I think he needed her, because when Jack was out of the picture, he wouldn't have that man, that clever person. You know, I'm not saying he's dumb. He's not dumb, but sometimes he lets emotions run away with him. And I think Jack even said in a previous episode about how he listens to people. He gets a bit influenced by people. So he needed Sarah Litton. Yeah, great character.
Now what?
Somebody upstairs.
Get away.
I'll tell you there is. You'll stay here.
There I won't.
You heard what I said.
Why, it's only a babe.
And I suppose the final part of this episode is with Jimmy. He tries to steal off of Jack, and this is why the episode's called The Way It Was in Murmansk, because basically Jack is kind of interrogating him. But, you know, obviously it would have been worse in Murmansk. As he says to Matt, you have no idea. But at the same time, he is harsh on this lad, but he needed it. The lad needed it. And it was interesting, he said about his father, didn't he? Like, his dad. He didn't have a dad. Well, she's a widower, or whatever. So he's had nobody to discipline him. And he's just had his mum saying what a wonderful job he's been doing thieving. And as Jack points out, he might not be such a nice lad when he goes to prison. And he needed this, and she needed this. And now this lad is scared. This is the first time this lad is scared about stealing. Before this point, he wasn't. But he also finds a solution. I love the way Jack finds solutions for everyday problems. So this lad's brilliant at running. So he thinks of the powder halls in Edinburgh. He's going to get trained professionally. And then at the end of the episode, you have this great scene where he's running. And basically Jimmy's saying to his mum what a great guy Jack is for helping me out like this. And she's like, yeah, he is, but I wouldn't want you to end up like him. I thought that's very funny at the end.
hope you're proud of yourself.
Sit down and shut up or leave. You stand over here. Move yourself! By God, when I say jump, you jump. Now then, you and me is going to get the truth. And you can wet yourself all you want, Bonnie lad, because you're going to clean it all up afterwards anyway.
Doing that to a bairn. You should think shame.
Steady on, missus. He's a thief.
We're all thieves and we have to be. Did he have to be?
Me man's dead. Pneumonia. There's nowt coming in.
See anything, Matt?
Bottle of gin empty.
I didn't buy it.
Thieved that for you and all, did he? You have got a loving son.
I know that, mister.
But he mightn't be so loving if he goes to Borstal. He's had a good run, but it won't last. Lost his nerve already by the looks of him.
Thanks to you.
I don't want thanks, but maybe I deserve them. He tells me he can run.
Like a gazelle in the Bible.
And get him trained, missus. Powder Hall's a place for him.
Powder Hall?
Professional racing up in Edinburgh. There's money in it, missus.
Aye, there's fiddling and all. You and your Jimmy should do very canny. Take him home.
Go on.
I suppose I ought to thank you.
No, you're hungry. You had to eat, so you had to steal. But enough's enough. He's a good-looking lad. If he goes to Borstal, he'll come back a Nancy boy. Here. Look at us, Bonnie lad. Your last bundle of swag. But you can't have the cigarettes. They're bad for your wind.
Decent of you to turn out.
You said I had to present the prizes.
Had to. Did I really say had to? But why aren't you canvassing?
No need. I think we're in, Arthur.
Good God. What on earth's he doing here?
Ready? Steady!
Like you said, missus, the lad's a flyer. Now don't you forget, Powder Hall. And you be his manager.
He's a smashing fella, isn't he, Mom? Mom, isn't he a smashing fella, I said?
You think so, do you?
Aye, well, maybe you're right.
I hope you don't end up like him, that's all.
I think this is a really good episode, actually. You've got a lot of different... There's a lot of politics in it, but interesting politics. It's not boring, is it? It's never boring when the boat comes in. I remember saying that to Susan Jameson about the politics in When the Boat Comes In, but it was never boring. It was always interesting. It was always entertaining. And in this episode particularly, because you have Mr. Ashton and Jesse quibbling over, putting posters up to do with their political beliefs. You've got Jack speaking at the rally for Labour for Geordie Watson. You've got the deals behind the scene. You see how things like that would happen back then, and probably today. You give me something, I give you something. It's that kind of thing. And you've also got Jimmy the Thief thrown in for good measure. So I would say this is a really good episode of When the Boat Comes In. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, it's not my favourite, as in like the best one, but I would say it's somewhere in the middle. One day I will rate every episode of When the Boat Comes in order, I think. Once I've talked about every episode, I'm going to finish this series, and then I'm actually due to have a baby. Yeah, so I may be slowing down a little bit. I still will be doing it, but I might have to slow down a little bit because I'm going to be a bit busy, aren't I? But I will continue to do it, of course, because I love doing it and I love the show. 2 more episodes to go of Series 2 of When the Boat Comes In. This one is in the front line. You get shot at. You meet one of the most evilest characters in the show, really, Colfax. Basically, he runs a non-union shop, and it's Jack's job to get the union in there. And it's a very good episode, and you kind of see what could have happened, but in the end it doesn't happen because of what happens in the episode. I mean, with Colfax, obviously, he hates the union. he doesn't want to do any sort of deals, because he's even prepared to bring people in from the outside and pay their train fares. So this is how much he's against the union. Jack's plan, I mean, it's a very good plan actually. It's to handle the scabs in their military way, because he does take the guy from London to the pub and they're all ex-army, aren't they? So he's saying, we can handle the scabs and you don't want to know how. But it turns out I'm sure it's him that tips off Colfax about what's going to happen.
Come here to work, brother.
Come on, Eddie.
Mr. Ford!
Come on.
I told you it'd come. I told you. Oh, it's war, is it?
Not with one battalion, it's not. This time, the whole bloody army goes over the top.
I'll tell you how it is, General.
Jack?
Thanks, Matt. If our lads go on strike, Colfax will bring in scabs. Well, we can handle the scabs, I told you. Only you didn't want to know.
Well, maybe I've changed my mind.
All right. Durham Light Infantry, Northumberland Fusiliers, Tyneside Scottish, Tyneside Irish. We can handle the scabs.
But what you're saying...
I've said nought.
What you're implying, then, it's violence. I'll have no part in it.
And bugger off and leave the job to men.
Manners and Jack have a very sophisticated lunch in the country. You've got a beer keg there, you've got people clay pigeon shooting. Manners does this to influence them, and yeah, I can see why he does it, to be honest. It's giving something back, but it's in hope of their loyalty, isn't it, more than him being a nice guy. But he's a businessman, isn't he? And he talks to Jack, and he's trying to stitch Jack up at this stage. And luckily, Jack doesn't fall for it. He's saying about a bet between him and Colfax. If Jack doesn't do it, he gets £1,000. Luckily, later on, Jack doesn't fall for this, because it was all a plan to set Jack up. And yeah, I mean, it's clever from Manners, but at the same time he should have realised that Jack wasn't a dummy, was he? He's very intelligent, and he was never really going to fall for that, I don't think so. Although his eyes really do light up when he mentions the £1,000. He's like, as you would, you know, back then especially. I wonder how much £1,000 was back in those days. Wow, 10 grand, 20 grand. Must have been a hell of a lot of money back then.
Colfax wants to fight it.
Likely.
He wants to win. In fact, he's asked me to make a bet with you, Port. £1,000 if you don't force the union on him. £1,000 if you fail.
You see? Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
Colfax is an idealist.
Get away.
Oh, but he is. The last of the unregenerate capitalists. He believes in that. Believes in himself. Wants to go into politics, too. Colfax, the hammer of the unions. Not this time. This time you lose.
I haven't said I'll do it yet.
You will.
Why will I?
Soon you'll be in business for yourself. For that, you'll need capital.
Maybe. I'll think about it.
Don't think too long.
You shouldn't be thinking at all. Not when you're drinking champagne. Champers is awfully bad for cogitation.
Then you must help us drink it, Lady Caroline.
I should think so. You've been neglecting me dreadfully. I didn't even know you were here.
Of course, when Jack first meets Colfax, he's ignoring him completely. Jack asks the question eventually, but when he arrives, Colfax is doing his papers. So I like what Jack does. He does exactly the same to him, and then the conversation starts. And yeah, Jack asks the question, or says there's going to be a strike, basically, if you don't allow the union in. And he rings his bell, and he's like, no. Good day, Ford. And then they have a longer conversation about what's going to happen. And you can sense that Colfax, he's not having unions, because he'll bring people in from the outside, he'll pay their train fares. So it shows how much he's against union labour.
Well?
I always say first thing in the morning is the time for paperwork.
You didn't come here to tell me that.
I didn't come here to tell you anything. I came to ask for something.
Then you've come to the wrong shop.
I've come here to ask you to allow unionised labour in this works.
No. Good day, Ford. I said good day.
I heard you. It'll get rough.
I don't give way to threats.
I'm not making any.
Then what are you doing?
Prophesying. If you don't let the union in, my union in, you'll have a strike.
My God, you're stupid. Strike. I'll lose 50 fitters. I'll hire 50 more and the strike will be over. Good day.
Not this time. You've scraped the barrel. There aren't 50 fitters left who haven't joined the union. I doubt if there's 10.
Then I'll take on those that are. I'm doing it now. But I won't have shop stewards and I won't pay union rates.
Then you'll still have a strike.
No. I'll bring in men from outside. I can get all the fitters I want if I pay their train fares.
You'd really do that?
I've done it before, 20 years ago.
Before the war?
Business is war, Ford. All that matters is to win.
Good day, Colfax.
Jack gets another visit, or rather Jack visits Colfax again, and the policeman tells him about what will happen if he does what he's going to do, and then Jack realises he can't do this. It's a shame because that probably could have worked. If Colfax wasn't tipped off about it, I expect it would have worked. All of them being ex-army, and it was a great plan, but that guy from London, I'm sure it was him, completely messed it up. Obviously, he tipped off Colfax. I'm sure it was him, wasn't it? Yeah, it's a shame, really. But later on, in another episode, he does get his revenge on Colfax, doesn't he? And I really like that part of the story later on. And it's one of the only examples where Jack is beaten, really, early on in the series. Of course, later on in the series, when he does make his money and he comes back to Blighty, he hasn't got a penny, has he? Because he's lost it all in the Wall Street crash.
The reason I made you come here...
You didn't. I made myself come. I'm like that. Glutton for punishment.
You hear?
What I hear is irony. It's not an indictable offense.
Violence is... when this man is plotting violence.
Am I?
Yes. You are. If I bring workers in from outside, you're going to have them assaulted.
You've been looking in your crystal ball again, Colfax. If you have, it's been lying to you. You should have it arrested.
Tell him.
It's not on, you know.
What isn't?
What Mr. Colfax saw in his crystal ball. Well, there's no harm in Mr. Colfax seeing things, but if they were ever to become a reality...
Go on.
If workers from outside were attacked, if there was violence, intimidation, the possibility of riot, I'd turn out every man I've got and have the Riot Act read. I'd meet force with more force. There'd be broken bones and broken heads. They wouldn't be my men's. That's what I see in my crystal ball, Mr. Ford. It doesn't lie.
There'll be no riot. I'm obliged to you. You were never in the war, were you, Mr. Colfax? You spent it back here making dud shells. Well, I'll tell you something you don't know, seeing as how you weren't there. We lost Wipers, we lost the Somme, and we lost the Marne, thanks to you and the Germans. But we won the war.
What happens next? The guy from London, he comes by, doesn't he? Brother Boothroyd, was it? Yeah. And he's a pencil pusher, really, isn't he? He's not great. He goes to visit the lads, and of course, they're not interested in what he has to say, to be honest. He's very up himself, isn't he, to be honest? It's interesting, isn't it? Like, the people from Newcastle, they were all working class who were in the Union, but somebody from London wasn't. You know, obviously there was a lot of working class people in London as well. But that's interesting. But of course, he tips off Colfax. I'm sure he does. Does he actually say that 100%? I know he was tipped off, but I just presume it's Brother Boothroyd. But I'm not sure if you find out exactly who it was. But Colfax is tipped off, and then Jack's warned about what will happen in the crystal ball if these events unfold. The policeman warns Jack, and then that's it. That's the end of it. It's funny with Eddie Morton because he's buying him whiskies, isn't he? Because Jack says he's preparing for the war kind of thing. But by the end of it, he gets him a beer, and he's like, "You were getting me whiskies the other day," and he's like, "Well, that was when you were fighting for me." Yeah, so he gets him a job there, doesn't he? And he says, "You've got to turn up there sober." So yeah, I thought this episode is brilliant. I really love this episode. It's a shame Jack didn't win that battle because he had it all planned, and if he wasn't tipped off Colfax, it would have worked, probably, more than likely, or it would have been a good fight, wouldn't it? And of course, at the end of the episode, you've got Manners, or near the end of the episode, you've got Manners handing over a cheque to Jack for £1,000. And of course, Jack sees through this. He knows that this is a plan from Manners to do Jack for bribery and corruption. And Jack knows this is all about getting the land for Mandrake Place that he wants so much. And yeah, because if he went to prison, he'd be able to sell it at a cut price, wouldn't he, the land? So he knows. Jack's very clever, and I like the way he takes the cheque. £1,000 all in my hand at one time. If only my mother could have seen it. And then he tears it up in front of Manners' face, and he tells him that he's figured it out, and he says exactly what I just said then. Yeah, I love that, because Manners must have thought, I got him, but he didn't get him, did he?
$1,000. All in me hand, all at one time. Only me mother could see us.
What the devil are you playing at?
I didn't earn it. But from Colfax. Colfax had his own pet lapdog back at headquarters, you said so yourself. And a champion job he did for Colfax and all. I didn't out. It had nothing to do with Colfax. It was your idea. You wanted to put me away, Manners. Bribery and corruption. I could do a canny bit time for that.
Don't be ridiculous, man. Why should I?
Because I've got some land you want. It'll be no good to me and Jug. Likely I'd have to sell it cheap to pay for my defence. Admit it, Manners. That was your money you were giving us. Colfax didn't put up a penny. Why should he? You were just trying to have me put away. And it's no good sulking, Manners. I mean what I say.
Another theme of this episode is Bella. She's not very well. She thinks she's got colic, but it turns out she has a much bigger problem. In the end, she has an operation, and there's a really nice scene at the end where Jack visits Bella in the hospital. He gets her an orchid, which must have been... I mean, they must be hard to get now, to be fair, but back then it must have been even harder. And she's like, where did he get an orchid from? And she mentions about, oh, this is like what queens would get. And he was like, it's a queen I bought it for. Just, it's a lovely end to the episode, isn't it? And she deserves that. And they had an interesting relationship, didn't they, Jack and Bella? There was that interesting scene where they share a kiss. Do you remember that episode where she's drunk and he takes her home, puts her to bed? But this scene is really nice, and she deserved that.
How is she?
She'll be all right. It was appendicitis, like Willie said, but they operated in time.
Thank God.
You're looking very smart.
Aye, you're going away soon.
Going away? From Gather Shield?
No, just from the Union.
You mean to say those ungrateful beggars have got rid of you?
All the way around, Bonnie lass.
And what's that supposed to mean?
She's waking up.
All right. I want a word all the same. Hello, ma'am. Here's Jack Ford come to see you.
What fettle, Bonnie lass?
Connie, I could do with a
A drop of gin, no. Aye, Jack, I was scared. Scared they were going to stick things in us.
I've been scared of that and all.
And they went and cursed just the same. How are you, bonny lad?
Canny,
Still getting on?
still getting on. I'll just give her this and then I'll go.
Not before we've had that word.
Aye, all right. She bullies the lot of us.
Oh, that she doesn't. Just them that needs it.
Here. For you, bonny lass. Hurry up and get well.
Oh, Jack. It's beautiful. Look, Jessie, it's fit for a queen.
It was a queen I bought it for.
Dance to the daddy, sing to the mommy. Dance to the daddy, to the mommy, sing. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a haddock when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a bloater when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a mackerel when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy. Thou shalt have a salmon when the boat comes in.
Hello and welcome to the When the Boat Comes In podcast. This is the final episode of Series 2, The Simple Pleasures of the Rich. This is one of my favourite episodes. I'd say it would be in like the top 3. Yeah, I love this episode. The destruction of Mandrake Place, of course. At the beginning of the episode, you see Jack. He's eyeing up Mandrake Place, and he's looking at plans of this pit called the Arabella, and basically he needs this pit to destroy Mandrake Place. And it's such a brilliant episode. There's so much happens in it. Of course, you've got Matt and Sarah. They're starting to get together, and Jack basically tells Sarah about what's going to happen next. He's not going to run the Fitters Union anymore. Matt's going to get $400 a year. She's quite gobsmacked at this. And yeah, you can see what's going to happen next. He's preparing to be a boss, isn't he, Jack, at this point? He wants to get the land, he wants to sell it to Manners, and then he can start to make his fortune. As he says later to Jessie, he's going to be a bourgeois, which means like an entrepreneur these days, doesn't it? Back then they were bourgeois. And Jessie's like, I always knew it would happen at one point. And Jack also says that he likes people, which he does. I mean, he helps people out, but at the same time, he likes to get on, doesn't he? Yeah, and it's very interesting, this episode, how things unfold. Of course, Tom Seaton wants a divorce for Dolly. She's pregnant. And it's quite funny when he tells this to Bill, and Bill's like, you don't get it, do you? Because Tom's like, it's like a miracle. And Bill's like, well, it's going to be hard telling Jack because you've succeeded at something he failed at. You know, although she did get pregnant, but she had a miscarriage, yeah. But still, that's an awkward conversation later. And again, it's that kind of thing of you give me something, I give you something. And that's what happens in terms of the divorce. Of course, Jack, it's like, that'll take a lot of thinking about, but he's after something, isn't he? He wants Tom to push the lever down on the explosives to blow up Mandrake Place.
What can I do for you?
It's a sort of favour.
Oh, aye.
Hey, me and Dolly,
Well, you can tell me, Tom.
we want to get married.
But she is married, how can you?
If you divorced her, we could.
Divorce? What's a big thing, Tom? Takes a lot of thinking about, does that?
Oh, it's asking a lot, I know, but...
You're right, it is. And who were you thinking would be the guilty party?
Sorry?
Who's doing the adultery? You two?
Of course. Well, I mean...
Aye, I know what you mean, all right.
I'm sorry, Jack, only I've got to tell you this. There's a bairn on the way.
What?
Dolly's expecting.
You bloody liar!
It's true, Jack.
True? It can't be true, and you know it. Or didn't she tell you? Dolly can no more have a bairn than you can.
Jack,
That's why she went after yours.
Jack, will you listen?
Get on your feet and I'll flatten you. Dolly had a miscarriage.
I know, man, she told us.
And did she tell you the doctor said she could never be pregnant again?
Aye, she did. The doctors were wrong, Jack. I'm telling you the truth. You've only got to look at her, man. That's another reason we want to get married.
Well, well. Well, 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 well. So, it's congratulations, is it?
I hope so.
Aye. And you want a divorce?
We do, Jack. Yes.
But you don't want her being the guilty party, man. It's a terrible thing for a woman, that. All that evidence, dirt in the Sunday papers.
There's no help for it.
Why, there is, Bunny lad. There's me.
You've done nothing.
There's Ways Mara, women you can hire. Weekend in Scarborough and a private detective catches her in a camisole. Dolly's name would hardly be mentioned. Yours wouldn't be mentioned at all. Make your mum feel a lot better that way.
Why should you do that, Jack? Like you said yourself, divorce is a big thing.
Learned a bit sense when you were in Jogue, didn't you, Tom? Or has Dolly been teaching you? I wouldn't be doing it for nothing, Mara.
My dad says he'll put up what's needed.
Not money, Tom. I'll take care of that. You want me to do you a favor? Well, I want a favor from you.
There's a couple of conversations I like in this episode. You've got the conversation between Jack and the Duke of Bedlington about the simple pleasures of the rich, and that's the name of the episode. The Duke's like, you'll get 'em all right, but I don't know if you'll enjoy them. And I liked that sort of meeting of minds. I liked that in When the Boat Comes In. Very much like when Jack first meets Manners, and it's like a job interview, and he's seeing how clever he is. It's that kind of thing. And back then, there was a way of doing things, the way gentlemen would talk to each other, and it was clever. It wasn't very to the point. They were clever enough to work it out for themselves. I'm trying to think of another show. Possibly, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Broadwalk Empire. A different show, but set in the 1920s. And Nookie Thompson, who's the main character in that, he talks in this clever way with people. They have a conversation, you know, it's over a long period. It's the art of conversation, isn't it? So, yeah, the art of conversation, I love that in When the Boat Comes In, particularly between Jack and usually the upper classes, you know, the people who have made it. I find all that very interesting. The other conversations I really like, well, the conversation I liked in this episode was between Jack and Jessie. They sort of reminisce about what could have been, really. Yeah, because Jack again mentions about, I said I'd build you a palace, and I said I'd fill it with beer for your mum when she came round to visit. Yeah, so that's kind of sad, really.
Well, won't you sit down? A bit early for you, I suppose.
Far too early. Jack, are you sober?
Not very. You've come to ask me for something.
What makes you think so?
You never come for aught else.
It's Tom.
I thought it might be.
You're going to blow up Mandrake Place.
Well, nothing so drastic. Just collapse the foundations, that's all. Let nature take its course.
But Tom's going to do it.
One good turn deserves another, Jessie.
He could be killed.
He could. Or he could live happy ever after. Him and Dolly and his bairn and theirs.
So that's why you're doing it. And for heaven's sake, stop drinking. I'm trying to talk sense.
If you want to nag, Jessie, try your husband, but just remember that's not me.
You had your chance.
And I muffed it. Now Tom's got his.
You always did know how to hurt.
I was talking to a duke the other day. We were discussing morals, and he reckoned he didn't have any. And neither did I. But I like people, Jessie, and I like liking them. Does that make sense, school teacher?
So far.
Trouble is, I like me count square and all.
You're saying Tom hurt you?
You know he did.
I know he hurt your pride. Are you still set on leaving the Union?
I'll leave next week. I'm going to be a boss, Jessie Seaton. A bourgeois, even if it kills us.
It was bound to happen eventually. I always knew deep down.
I said I'd build you a palace once, remember? And you said you hoped the palace would have beer in it if your mum came to stay.
I remember.
I meant it, no.
But you'll still do nothing for Tom.
Tom's looking out for his own, for his woman, for his bairn.
And who are you looking out for, Jack?
There's only me, bonny lass.
And of course, Manners visits Jack, and Jack tells him the price for the land that he's got from Lady Caroline. Of course, he was hoping to buy this land from Lady Caroline himself. I think he said 500 he wanted for this land. And Manners is like, you're a greedy young man. Yeah. And it's quite funny, this whole thing, really. But in the previous episode, Manners did try and stitch him up as well, so there's probably a bit of spite from Jack as well. The gloves are off, so to speak, and you can't blame him, can you, really? But then Manners is like, I don't want your land, and then he storms off, doesn't he, in a temper because he hasn't got his own way. And Lady Caroline asks him, are you still going to blow it up, to Jack? And he's like, yeah, I'm still going to blow it up. Eventually he will want the land. Yeah. But, I mean, this is brilliant, isn't it? The whole situation of blowing up Mandrake Place. And he does this a couple of times where he does really clever things that are kind of controversial but clever. So the other thing is with Wellesley Street later on. Do you remember? I think that's in the third series. He buys that land and then sells it again. Another land deal. Clever. Because it doesn't... It's something like it wasn't owned by anybody, or we'll find that out in the later series, the next series. But Jack's very clever when it comes to land deals, and I expect with Manners he was like, it'll take an army to blow up Mandrake Place, and he's like, I better raise one then, and he does. Yeah, he gets people who he knows, people who he trusted, and it's very much like a military operation when they blow up Mandrake Place. Of course, you've got Matt there, you've got Tom, you've got lots of other people getting involved. They've obviously been paid well, and yeah, Matt's doing it as a favour. Tom, of course, owes this favour so he can get Dolly a divorce. As I said earlier, though, he doesn't push the plunger down, does he, with the explosives, the dynamite. Jack, in the end, does it, and it is one of the best cliffhangers, I think, ever. It's such a big cliffhanger. And I wonder what the gap was in between episodes, because you must have been like, does Jack survive? What happens? I mean, you would know when a new series was coming on that obviously Jack survived. But before this point, you wouldn't know, would you? So I think it's a great cliffhanger and one of the best endings of when the boat comes in.
It's all clear, Tom?
Uh-huh. I don't need you, Jack.
Interesting. Educational, this is.
You bugger off, man.
Tell us what you're going to do.
I just connect up this other terminal and give it a good twist.
That's all.
That'll be enough.
Toss you for it.
No fear, this is my job.
I'm not doing this for you, Bonnie lad. This is for Dolly. For the bairn, the one that's coming.
I gave you my word, Jack.
And you kept it, you hear? It was my fault. You took a woman off us. Never could stand that. Well, I was wrong.
I was wrong and all, you know I was.
So we're both wrong. So we'll toss for it. Dolly been no use without a man. We both know that. Give it a chance, Bonnie lad. Call.
Heads.
You lose, off you go.
You cheated us, Jack.
Don't talk daft, you lost. Now bugger off.
All right, then. So long, Jack.
So long, Mara.
I beg pardon, miss. Have you seen Jack? Mr. Ford?
No. It's very odd. He said he was going to meet me here. Too bad if he missed it. After all, it is his show.
Jessie Seaton, Jessie Seaton. Why did you have to have a brother? Dear God.
Dance to the daddy, sing to the mommy, dance to the daddy, to the mommy, sing.